Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking,
this is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
down to earth,
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
and most importantly, honest,
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Good morning. The naysayers pile on Labour as the party suffers a series of PR nightmares.
The Reform UK leader Nigel Farage accuses the Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, of masking the truth about grooming gangs after he claimed current public discourse could increase the risk of attacks against British Muslims.
In a week that saw borrowing costs soar to their highest in over 25 years, the Chancellor tries to claw back control by promising to wage a war on public spending.
Pressure mounts on Sir Keir Starmer to sack Treasury Minister Tulip Siddiq after calls for a corruption investigation into her London properties.
The Los Angeles fires rage on. Death toll reaches 16. The blame, though, is now being laid at the feet of celebrity residents who broke water-saving rules to tend their lavish gardens.
Sub-zero temperatures continue as rare amber alerts for the cold are extended until Tuesday.
If the big freeze is proving a bit much, never fear. We'll be finding out all about the best spots to catch some winter sun.
A very good morning. Manchester City cruise through to the FA Cup fourth round with an 8-0 win over Salford, but captain Kyle Walker tells them in a shock move that he wants to leave. And no Rooney, no problem. Plymouth throw up the day's only cup shock with victory at Brentford.
It's a foggy start to Sunday out there for some of us. Join me later for the full weather details to see how things will develop today.
It's just gone 6 o'clock. I'm Stephen Dixon.
And I'm Anne Diamond, and this is GB News Breakfast.
I'm filled with moral outrage this morning.
Oh, gosh.
Moral outrage.
Why?
Ladies and gents. Is this that I've read? And it's in the Observer this morning. So you know the gig economy?
Yeah.
So it's like people who work in bars and restaurants and things and all that sort of thing. Anyway, and retail people. Anyway, there's this new payment system been brought in for one company. Whereas if you want to be paid quickly, you have to give them 5% of your wages.
What?
Yeah. So if you want to be paid within 24 hours, or 1 minute, I beg your pardon, it's 1 minute, you have to pay 4.8% of your earnings. You pay 2.9% to be paid in 3 days, or you have to wait 30 days if you don't want to pay anything.
That is appalling.
I don't see how that can be legal.
No, I
really don't. Previously, within this company, you were paid
Can't
within
you say
3
the name
days.
Of the company?
No, I best no.
Shame.
I don't want to because it just just legal reasons, really.
But, but is this the sort of company that? I mean, what sort of gig?
These are retail assistants. But of course, if you're in the gig economy and you're effectively a freelance, you're not earning regularly and you're not earning a lot of money. So you need to
30 days.
You need to get hold of your money quite quickly. So so if you want to get your money quickly, it's going to cost you anything up to 5% of your salary.
That just shows where they're making their money. They're hanging on to money that actually should be paid to employees.
Yeah, I think it's an absolute disgrace.
That is. I understand you being morally outraged.
Morally outraged.
OK.
Start a campaign.
Tell you what, though, something you guys will both be interested in, because I know you're very into your colognes and smelling nice, which I think is important.
I'm running low at the moment, actually.
Oh, dear.
There's
a new dating programme going to start on one of the streaming services. Where they are, you wear a blindfold and you have to just guess whether or not you're suited to somebody by their smell.
Oh, but natural smell,
well,
like
I don't know. It doesn't
pheromones.
go into that.
But it's like pheromones, all that sort of thing. No, but you can do that. I'm a believer in that.
Yeah, I am as well. I do like a bit of cologne. I do like a bit of smell. Sometimes people wear the same cologne for so long that you associate them with that smell anyway, more than anything else they can smell of.
Yeah, but I do think it's important. But I mean, being the mother of sons, I've always said, it's really important how you smell.
Especially teenage boys.
Yeah, absolutely.
God, they stink.
There is something stinky about teenage boys, yes.
I remember. I used to have to bathe in Joop when I was a teenager.
That was the purple one, wasn't it?
Pinky purple thing. I used to buy it by the bucket.
Always on special offer.
At least you cared.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I think that's terribly important. I just think it's interesting. They're putting this they're resting this dating game on take away, what people look like and just go by their smell.
It's important.
That could be quite good.
The thing is, since COVID, my smell's not been exactly the same. So I pile it on. That's why I go through my perfumes in double quick time.
The only problem, I guess, with them is on television is that you can't
tell.
The viewers at home won't be able to tell themselves whether or not they're attracted to somebody by the smell alone.
No, that's true, but I think sometimes it's good that we can't smell things on television.
These two are very into their colours.
Would you like this one? Yes.
Oh, it's very delicate, rather nice. Yeah. What is it? No, you're not allowed to say.
Well, it's a Boss one, but it's not mine. I bought it for somebody else, but I just...
Bought it for somebody else, but you tried it first?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, see if it's nice.
You bought it for your husband?
I bought it for my husband.
Yeah, and now you
No, it's shared. It's shared.
I'm down to samples.
Are you?
I'll buy some this week, yeah.
It's not like you.
No, I know, don't worry. I'll just think I can't choose which one I want, that's all.
How do you get the samples? Do you take them home?
If you spend a certain amount, they usually send you some samples.
Oh.
Yeah. And if you go to a store, it's better because you can just hang around until they give you as many as you want, as you need. And,
I always think that's a lovely prezi for somebody as well, just like a stocking filler type prezi.
Oh, it is.
Is if you can get samples.
You can get them in a box.
Cool.
You can usually get them in a box, half a dozen different smells. Yeah, they're good.
Very nice.
Well, there you go. That's top tip for next Christmas.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right, let's move on to our top story now. It's been a week from PR hell for Labour. Nigel Farage has reignited the debate over whether a national inquiry should be held into the child rape gangs. The Reform UK leader accused the Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, of trying to conceal the reality of the gangs after he claimed the public discourse could risk vilifying certain communities. Well, that's as Labour MP Dan Carden has broken ranks from Sir Keir Starmer, joining Andy Burnham in his calls for a national inquiry.
Meanwhile, the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, has vowed to launch a war on wasted public finances as she ignores the growing calls to resign after borrowing costs reached a 25-year high this week.
Well, as if that wasn't enough, Labour faces turmoil elsewhere. Tulip Siddiq, the MP, and niece of the overthrown Prime Minister of Bangladesh, has been forced to refer herself to the ethics watchdog amid claims that the anti-corruption minister lived in properties linked to her ousted aunt. So she's facing claims of corruption.
But she's referred herself now, which is never a good sign either, I suppose. But we'll see what happens on that. Anyway, we're joined, I think, now by political commentator John Oxley. A very good morning to you, John.
Good morning.
Yes, there's a lot going on at the moment. I mean, any other government would be feeling the headaches pretty badly, but it seems that this particular government just won't give in, won't consider a U-turn on any of their most unpopular ideas.
Yes, and I think, that's one of the interesting things about this period. Obviously, Labour did win in the summer with quite a big majority, but they feel like they're already in the trap that the Conservatives were in towards the tail end of their government, where everything seems to be going wrong. And there is this instinct to be very defensive and batten down the hatches rather than getting ahead of the problem the way proactive governments do and responding quickly and heading these things off. So they tend to linger and build up and become even worse. And then you look foolish at the end when eventually you do succumb to all this pressure. So it's really, a lot of things going wrong for Labour, and they don't seem to be handling them particularly well when they do as well.
The Tulip Sadiq thing is interesting because whereas a lot of the issues affect a lot of people, this obviously doesn't. But it's that idea that that someone in the top tier of government can't be trusted. I mean, Kemi Badenoch has called for her to be sacked. There's all this embezzlement claims in Bangladesh, of course, to which she's linked by family. And Mrs. Badenoch said the Prime Minister had appointed his personal friend as an anti-corruption minister, and she is accused herself of corruption.
Yeah, we have to be very careful about what exactly is being said here. But for a role like running anti-corruption, it really is one of those things where you ought to be beyond any sort of suspicion. And this, again, is an issue that has been known about for some time with Tulip Sadiq. It's not a new... There are new details that have come out, but her relationship with her aunt and her aunt's holding power is something that everyone's known about. And it is a bit baffling that she was given that particular role. And it really was only a matter of time before something comes out like this. And it starts to question Keir Starmer's judgment. And particularly, we know they are politically and personally very close. And it starts to look exactly like the sort of sleaze that a year ago Sir Keir Starmer was really going into the Conservatives about, that sort of chumminess, turning a blind eye to what your mates have been up to. And it makes his government look very weak, I think, and him as a leader look very weak as well, that he's fallen into this trap.
There's a lot of political mud being thrown around at the moment, isn't there? There's a sort of like a febrile atmosphere. There's a big front page about how many jobs Nigel Farage is holding, not just the one being an MP, but lots of other jobs. There's a Daily Mail front page about Elon Musk. And for heaven's sake,
Dominic Cummings.
Dominic, thank you. I was trying to think of his first name. Dominic Cummings joining together and maybe even forming another political group. Does that suggest to you that, I mean, there's just so much dissatisfaction with this government, everybody else is looking everywhere else?
I think that's true. And I think it's also what we saw in the summer was the start of this big spread of votes. It was the lowest combined share of the two biggest parties, I think, ever. A lot of votes going to Reform UK, but also to parties like the Green Party winning more seats, the Gaza-related independents who won 5 seats. What we're seeing, I think, is this old system of the two major parties is breaking down. People aren't happy with Labour in government. They're still not happy with the Conservatives as a potential opposition and an alternative. So there is a lot going round. And I think that's getting people excited about new alternatives and opening up the opportunity for new campaigning groups, new figures in politics to try and make hay with that.
Isn't it interesting that you referred to the Conservatives as a potential opposition? I mean, they are His Majesty's official opposition, aren't they? It just doesn't feel like that.
Well, yes, that's the thing. And, they're not that much bigger than the other parties combined. Usually in politics in Westminster, you have the big governing party, then you have a second place party that's still a lot bigger. But if you look Reform seemed outsized in membership. The Lib Dems, let's not forget, have 70-odd MPs. They're nearly 2/3 the strength of the Conservatives, which has been very different from previous oppositions. And they're still really unpopular. The Conservative Party is polling at the start of this year basically the same as it was at the start of last year. So there's no real sense that they've turned around and that they're on the ascendancy back to government. There are real questions as to whether this is a party that is still in the decline, and whether, if there is another general election in 5 years' time, whether they're going to do better or whether they're going to fall back even further.
And meanwhile, again, they're throwing mud at each other, particularly about the rape gangs and the sort of rhetoric that is used. Wes Streeting, did you find it... What did you think of his comment yesterday, was it, about the rhetoric could be very, very damaging and hurtful?
I think it is something we always have to be conscious of, but it feels like the sort of comment where you're trying to avoid the substance of the issue. There is a debate to have whether a new national inquiry will be useful or not. But that's a debate to be had on the merits of that case, not whether you think it is insensitive to have an inquiry. And I think as well, there is a lot of public outrage out there, and we need to be very careful about dismissing that or trying to brush it away, because this is an issue that really matters to a lot of people, and rightfully so. And to sort of turn around in Westminster and be worried about how people are expressing themselves seems to brush over actually what people are rightfully very concerned about.
Yeah. John, good to see you. We'll catch up with you a little bit later on. I mean, they do need to take some of the pressure out of this, but I wonder if the way to do that is to have the inquiry. Yes. That will take some of the pressure off it. And Dan Cardle is the Labour MP who's now called for a national inquiry. Obviously, Andy Burnham, the Mayor of Greater Manchester, has done so already. I wonder if these splits are going to start coming faster and faster now.
What I found very interesting about what Dan Cardwell said as well is that he went even further, didn't he? He said, just to be calling for a national inquiry doesn't mean you're far right. I'm glad somebody like him said that. It's about time.
Yes, because if they start to throw that about, that anyone who wants to look into it more deeply is far right, well, that would just be absolutely outrageous.
Well, that's more or less what Keir Starmer was suggesting when he made his statements the other day.
Well, it could be seen.
Well, it certainly felt like that. But so for a Labour MP to come out and say, no, it's not that way at all, he's sticking his neck out, isn't he?
I tell you what, John said it just as I was thinking it there, that this feels like... Because these stories, like the Tulip Sadiq thing, these pile up when a government's in real trouble, because any little thing adds to the pressure. But that does feel like a government that's been in power for 10, 15 years and is coming to the end of its life. Because that's what happens. Think of what happened to when John Major was coming to the end of his tenure and things. It was all family values. Everything just starts to collapse.
It was like a wall collapsing, crumbling in front of you.
But that's happening now. 6 months in. This is what is so extraordinary with this. Anyway, amidst all of this, of course, is the financial side of it all. We're asking in our poll today, do you trust Rachel Reeves to cut wasteful public spending? She's going to wage a war on public spending, she says. Well, to be fair, she's got to, because she's said she doesn't want to raise taxes because they pledged not to, and she's going to have to borrow more money. But she's not going to spend that on frivolous stuff. So it's got to be. So she's going to have to cut somewhere. So do you trust her to do that and to cut back wasteful public spending? We'll bring you the results throughout the day. Final result in Nana's show. And if you want to take part, gbnews.com/poll.
Now, you probably don't need us to tell you that if you look outside, or if you venture outside, it's colder than usual this time of year. In fact, it is the chilliest January we've had in over a decade.
Yes, temperatures dropped to nearly -20 in parts of Scotland. There are amber cold alerts extended until Tuesday.
And people who are aged 65 and over, or with health conditions, are also being urged to take extra care.
Let's talk to meteorologist Jim Dale. Is it really as bad as it seems in the headlines, Jim?
When you say bad, I was up in Scotland, actually. I was up in the Highlands. I was chasing the cold a couple of days ago, believe me. And it was absolutely freezing. I guess it is. I guess it is for most people. Look, this is extremely unusual in terms of, most of the time that we go through winter, we almost skip the cold. It's of late anyway, and this is a sort of wake-up call that we can get a proper winter from time to time. And when I say a proper winter, the average up in say Altnahara, for example, which is a hamlet that got the minus 18.9, and it's a beautiful, beautiful place. But it's stark, it's huge mountains straight into a little valley, and that's where it gets what it gets. But their average is generally speaking just above freezing for January. So you can see it's a million miles away from that, and we've had to endure that. But it is changing. It's a cold day in London, by the way, at the moment. London Stansted around -6, central London between -2 and -4. It's all on the east coast now, or the east part of the country. So the west, when we say it's cold, if you're listening in the west, it's not that cold. It's milding up quite markedly, which is going to be the sea change, and we're going to see that sea change come on over these next few days. It will take its time to get to the southeast of England, but the temperatures today are not quite as cold as they were in the previous couple of days when I was chasing the cold up north. But nonetheless, at least we're on the. And I think you'll find as the week unfolds, you almost forget what's happened. But it has been unusual, and for a meteorologist like me, it's been quite exciting in a way to see these sort of temperatures back again. Very good meteorological reasons, but occasionally we get that.
Yeah, and when they say, if you're age 65 and over, or if you have a health problem, you should take extra care. Now, a lot of people might say, well, look, we don't need to be told that, except that maybe it does need to be stressed. There's flu around, and I don't know, and we'll check whether you can still get a flu jab now. It may be considered a bit late, but on the other hand, it might be very well worth trying. Carrie Johnson, Boris Johnson's wife, she has been in hospital with the flu until just recently, and she said it was so bad she's going to take some weeks, if not months, to get over it. It is that serious. So maybe we should take health warnings seriously as well.
I was going to say what we got to take on board here is that weather is king. I mean, the weather stories, whether we're talking about LA fires or the cold or the rest of it, it's been dominating the week as far as we're concerned. It's been dominating every conversation, and what we've got to focus on here is just how much impact the weather has on us, and including what's happening in the terrible, terrible stuff that's going on in Los Angeles. And by the way, when we're talking about politics in this respect, Reform UK have been absolutely silent on their climate denial, man-made climate denial claims that they've held for a long time. I've had discussions in debates in the studio. Silence. You wonder why, don't you, with what's going on? This has moved things along. The LA fire, believe me, it's a complete. Valencia was bad enough. And there's stuff going on around the world as far as climate change is concerned. So when we talk about our cold, that's sort of a small sideline compared to what's going on with the climate. And I think people like yourself, journalists like yourself, presenters like yourself should be looking at Reform UK and one or two others that are out of that party and their climate denial, and really sort of investigating why they still hold these views, because they're becoming untenable.
OK, Jim Dale, thank you. Good to see you. To be fair, I mean, a lot of people just aren't convinced by the arguments. That's the thing.
There's evidence that the Los Angeles fires...
arson.
More than one is probably arson. And also the lack of water, and we're going to be talking about this later as well, is that apparently a lot of Angelenos, particularly the wealthier ones with vast gardens, have been using too much water. And in Los Angeles, it's been known for a long time that water is rationed. All year round it is, because they know there's a water problem. Well, apparently a lot of pretty well-known names have been using far too much water on their lawns.
Yes.
I mean, if you live in Los Angeles, you shouldn't have a green lawn.
No, you shouldn't. Just get a plastic one or something. I'll be messaging in about Jim. He's desperate to have a debate with a Reform MP, a member of the Reform Party. I don't think it's going to happen. Flu jabs, you can get one until the 31st of March. That's when they start doing it. If you're eligible, whether you can still buy them They're about 15 quid if you want to buy each. So if you're not eligible, you can normally buy one. Whether that's still the case with this, I don't know. But you can go and ask at your pharmacy or your GP.
It may well be worth your while because on top of this cold, you really do not want the flu.
No.
It is serious, as Carrie Johnson will tell you. She's been very ill with it.
It's a record number of people hospitalised and dying with flu this year. Right, it's grim news, but let's see what the weather is doing where you are with Jonathan.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, very good morning to you. This is your GB News weather updates provided by the Met Office. Misty and murky start to the day for some of us. There is fog out there with light winds courtesy of high pressure. That does mean the fog could linger for a good while throughout today, particularly eastern areas of England, also Northern Ireland. Some quite dense fog patches around, so it is worth taking care if you are about to head out and travel at all. There will be, though, some sunny spells around once those fog areas do manage to clear off, particularly across parts of England and Wales. Temperatures, though, still a little below par for where we'd normally expect them to be for the time of year, particularly in the far southeast of England, struggling in places to get above much of 2-3 degrees Celsius. But further towards the west, we're starting to see the ingress of some southwesterly winds, and that is feeding in much milder conditions, so 8-9 degrees Celsius possible here. Those southwesterly winds, though, will really quite strengthen for the northwest of Scotland, particularly around the Outer Hebrides and in the Highlands. We could start to see some gales developing during the afternoon and evening period. We'll also see outbreaks of rain moving its way in across Scotland, parts of Northern Ireland as well, turning damper and wetter to end the day here. We will manage to stay dry across parts of England and Wales, but again, the odd fog patch is possible. We will lose the frost compared to some recent nights, so it will be milder for all of us, but still low single figures for parts of England. And again, once that fog does manage to clear its way off, it will be parts of central eastern areas of England that see the best chance of some sunshine throughout tomorrow as well. Further towards the north and west, though, some heavier outbreaks of rain swinging their way in, a much wetter day here. And those southwesterly winds still very persistent, so it is going to be a noticeably mild day for the time of year. Double-digit figures for Northern Ireland and Scotland, which could lead to some snow melt of the snow that has fallen over the last week or so. So potentially some surface water issues as that falls over the next few days to watch out for. Otherwise, enjoy the rest of your day. Bye-bye.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either. This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
With the dawn of the new year come new opportunities for the stage. Stefan Kyriazis joins us now to share how he started 2025.
We've got Sigourney Weaver, Hollywood star, coming in as Prospero in The Tempest. It's an experience. Sigourney Weaver has got this kind of patrician presence. She's always on stage, sat watching or stalking the area, but she doesn't quite get the Shakespearean rhythms for me. We've got more trauma for you, and we've got a little clip to run first. Cat on a Hot Tin Roof. I don't know how people's Christmases were with their families, but this is a very unhappy family, so you can feel good about your family, whatever they're like. This is Tennessee Williams' deeply unhappy story of a family in sort of plantation south. The patriarch, Big Daddy, is dying, although he doesn't know it yet. Everyone is manoeuvring around him. Everyone is pretty unpleasant, pretty unhappy. It's all based on nobody really telling the truth. Everyone's suppressing things.
Got one more thing for us?
We do, and suddenly sunshine, life, joy. It's Nutcracker, but in Havana. Which is from Carlos Acosta. It's a very Cuban feel. And again, we've got a lovely little clip to cheer us all up.
Good.
That. there was no Christmas when he was growing up. Castro had banned it all. So we've got this setting in Cuba, and instead of magicians, you've got the uncle coming back from Miami, loads of presents. It's just full of joy, and you've got a reworked music. I love the Tchaikovsky score to death, but this one has been added, so you've got kind of Caribbean flutes and lutes and guitars. Huge exuberance, colourful, bright.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's 28 minutes past 6 now. The wildfires continue to engulf Los Angeles. More than 150,000 residents have now been evacuated from their homes, and there are strict curfews in place in the worst affected areas.
The death toll, though, has now risen to at least 16, they reckon. 13 people believed to be missing, and the expectations for the death toll to rise, of course, when house searches start.
Well, Hollywood stars Sir Anthony Hopkins, Paris Hilton and Adam Brody are amongst A-listers who've lost their homes in the wildfires.
Whilst Prince Harry and Meghan were spotted comforting and consoling residents in Pasadena who had to flee their homes to Pasadena Convention Centre.
Let's talk to the journalist Caroline Faraday, who's in Los Angeles this morning. Caroline, good to see you. I mean, just how grim is this now?
Grim. It's really grim. It doesn't matter where you are in Los Angeles. You can see smoke and you know somebody who's lost their home. In fact, multiple people that have lost their homes, because this is impacting thousands of people. And those people that haven't lost everything, haven't had power for days. They're sort of slowly getting some power back on. But it really is just living in fight or flight mode for days upon days at the moment. It's the scale of what's going on in Los Angeles is very, very hard to comprehend.
A lot of people think that that area of Los Angeles is just and only full of very rich people, A-list stars. But of course, that's not the truth, is it? There are lots of ordinary people, probably many of whom work in the film industry, but, you know, what we would call ordinary working people who have lost their homes and are desperate because they also may not have now insurance.
Yeah, it's really easy to focus, isn't it, on the big names and the massive mansions that have been lost. But in fact, the majority of people here are probably living paycheck to paycheck. You know, the restaurant that they work in has burned down. So even just losing a week's pay would be brutal, but losing their entire workplace, losing their home. Another friend of mine, she's Scottish, a friend of hers that she used to dance with, she was at work 10 o'clock in the morning and then got an alert on her phone that there was a small brush fire. She never even got back to her apartment. She has nothing. People have lost everything. And yes, you're absolutely correct. A lot of people in that area, Pacific Palisades, had their insurance stopped because in the insurance companies because of these wildfires in California. I mean, that said, this one is unprecedented, but because of wildfires in California, a lot of insurance companies had pulled out of California and people weren't able to get insurance, having their insurance cancelled or premiums sort of, you know, 3-4, just unaffordable really, 3-4 times what, you know, they were before. So it really is a dire situation, but we're not even really in that situation of saying, well, where are we now? We're in that situation of people still saying, is my home going to be next? Or where do I live? Or how do I go about even existing for the next few days?
Meanwhile, there's a lot of finger-pointing at celebrities, isn't there? I mean, to be fair, there's quite a number who've come out and said, you know, we're donating $1 million to help with the relief and rescue effort in all of this, which is laudable, of course, but also now concern over the number of celebrities who've been flouting the rules of using water just to keep their gardens lush in a place where water restrictions are there 24/7.
Yeah, look, there's sort of one rule for one and one rule for the other a little bit. I can remember in the Wolsey fire, the Kardashians, who, to be fair to them, they've donated money on this occasion, but they have these like private fire crews who come in as well and kind of protect people's homes. So they do have this level available to them that's a bit up there. That said, the area of Brentwood that is currently evacuated, I happen to know includes the Vice President's personal home and some other very nice homes. You know, she's out along with the rest of them, and you know, the firefighting effort continues in there, and that really is the most threatened area at the moment. If you think about the scale of this, the Palisades fire was just one of these fires, is about the size of Brighton and Hove. So we're not talking about a small area. We're not talking about, okay, is that like the size of like, I don't know, a little, like an estate in a town. It is the size of Brighton and Hove, in fact, slightly bigger than Brighton and Hove now. The second fire, the Eton fire, I'd compare that to about the size of Eastbourne. That is the area that we're talking about. I looked up earlier and I thought to myself, gosh, these images are so reminiscent of when you see, you know, images of nuclear bombs just taking everything out. And I thought to myself, how big an area did Hiroshima, the nuclear bomb in Hiroshima, take out? It was 5 square miles. This is sitting at 32 square miles, if you compare it, and taking out everything in its course.
But luckily,
and for those people, yeah.
I was going to say, but luckily, thank goodness, not taking out anything like the scale of human life, like the bomb. But I tell you what, to come back to celebrities for a moment, it is quite extraordinary, isn't it, that the huge hotels are now... there are pictures in the papers today of major celebrities, big deal film stars with a suitcase and a dog under their arm, just queuing up to rent suites in these major hotels, which are still charging £15,000 a night, some of them. There are the most extraordinary scenes on all levels, aren't there?
Yeah, look, it's illegal to price gouge in this situation, but who says that people don't? But I mean, it is extraordinary because, you know, you think, oh, celebrities, they've got everything and money will protect you from everything. Actually, you've got your children's memories there. That's the same. And, you know, your home that you built and you know, they got to flee just the same. It isn't a protection. But obviously, you know, those who have lesser resources are suffering far more than somebody who's hauled up in a luxury hotel. But, you know, doesn't matter who you are, that fire came through so quickly that even if you are, you know, a big celebrity or own a movie studio, you probably have got the clothes you stood up in, and just about managed to grab your pets. And actually, a lot of people are separated from their pets. In the area where I live is the animal shelter. People having to come and drop their pets off because they're homeless now and their pets haven't got anywhere to go. So there was a gentleman there when I went there. He was dropping off his dog and his 7 cats. There was another lady who was having to drop off her 2 cats, her dog, and her 2 mini pigs. People having to get like their big horses out and things like that, you know, into places because, you know, people do have horses. Or I knew there was a parrot in there that somebody had dropped off. I mean, it's just everybody is displaced and all over the place, and it's the most extraordinary situation because you're used to Los Angeles being this place where we just think of glitz and glamour and you know, life's all supposed to be lovely here, and it's not. It's like a war zone.
OK. Caroline, good to see you this morning. Thanks very much indeed.
Absolutely extraordinary scenes in Los Angeles. I mean, terrible, anguished scenes too. But, yeah. Awful.
Right. Away from that doom and gloom over there to what you could have over here. Let's give you something to smile about this morning, because how do you fancy starting the year, well, starting February, actually, with 50 grand in the bank from us, all tax-free. It could be yours, because it's our Great British Giveaway. And here's how you enter.
Don't miss your chance to win.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Figures released by the National Child Measurement Programme in 2024 found that almost 1 in 10 children was obese in the first year of school. Children living in deprived areas are twice as likely to be overweight as those in more affluent parts. Organisations like the Prepped Foundation are educating youngsters about healthy eating by giving them the skills to create balanced meals. TV chef James Golding has joined the foundation as the head of food education, and he joins me now to talk about the work. James, lovely to see you here.
Good to see you too. So Prepped used to be Table Talk Foundation, and it's now obviously Prep for Life, Prep for Knowledge. It's basically a charity to encourage kids to have a better understanding of food, but at the same time enjoy cooking and hopefully make better food choices in their life, as well as perhaps, you know, share the information we give them with their families.
Do you see them developing an understanding of the difference between healthy and unhealthy food?
Yes, I think that, you know, kids tend to sort of be taught a lot of this in school, but being able to actually ask questions to a chef and be able to cook with produce which they know is one, that is going to be tasty because they've tasted it, but two, open their eyes to food that they may not have tried before. I think that, you know, I think a lot of kids say they don't want to try stuff because they don't like the way it looks, but the way that we produce our sessions, you know, we encourage the kids to try, and I think it really does open their eyes. It's very easy, I think, currently to be able to make easier choices, say fast food choices or you know, that type of thing, and it's obviously giving people the ability to make the right choices, but also the skills to be able to do it. So I think it's something that needs to be addressed and something that really needs to be pushed, and that's what we're doing as a charity.
GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking,
this is the nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Aidan Scott, the sport, good morning.
Good morning to you both. Can I start with Kyle Walker?
Oh
yes. Well, look, he's had elements of his private life splattered on the front page of various tabloid papers over the last year or so. And look, I'm not saying that's the reason why he wants to get out of England, but it might be one of them. You might speculate. He's told Manchester City privately that he wants to leave the club. Now, don't forget, he's been an absolutely fantastic player for them.
Where would he go?
I think he's going to go to Saudi. This is the thing. The money over there. He's 34, so his next contract in England, like, he'd still do well, but not quite as well as he would do, even with spending 2 years in Saudi. You have to spend a couple of years there to get the tax benefits over there, but that could easily take him to 36. And he wants to move this window. Manchester City are already short of defenders. They've had a wretched season because they've had injuries in that area. And him going doesn't really solve any of their problems. In fact, it intensifies them, or increases them, rather. But I could see him going to Saudi, certainly, yeah. I think the money...
But if he doesn't like his private life making the front page...
Yes.
Presumably in Saudi he would continue to have the similar sort of private life. Do they get chased by newspaper reporters?
No, I think it's a little bit more difficult. Also, it's a bit more of a goldfish bowl. And so you probably wouldn't do that. I'm not even sure I'm not sure of his domestic arrangements, whether he'd take his family with him or whatever. But the scrutiny is not as heavy over there. If you went to somewhere like Italy, well, we all know where the word paparazzi came from. Yeah. It would be just as interesting for the local media over there.
It would.
But Ashley Cole, I remember one of the reasons he was said to have gone to the States 10, 12 years ago, having had a great career with Arsenal and Chelsea and with England, of course, was because he was a bit fed up of being on the front pages all the time. It did actually work for him. He wasn't quite as newsworthy when he came back. as he was having spent, or before spending 2 or 3 years over in Los Angeles. But anyway, nonetheless, I think it's probably going to signal the end of Kyle Walker's England career. It's very difficult when you're playing at that level of football in Saudi. It's, nobody really knows what the level is, and you do get some good players going over there.
You get paid a lot.
You do get paid a lot.
And then you get the tax benefits.
You do. If you stay there a certain period of time, I think it's 2 years. But I think at the age of 34, there were signs last summer in the Euros, particularly in the final, that he was probably just edging off that really peak area of his era of his career, or past his peak. And so I think that's probably a convenient mutual parting of the ways. I think just City would have preferred for it to happen in the summer.
Now, I know you want to talk about Plymouth Argyle versus Brentford. I know it's mainly because you don't want to talk about QPR losing 6-2 to Leicester City. But it's quite interesting with Plymouth, isn't it?
It is. Look, I mean, Wayne Rooney was there. Now, they've conceded 34 goals in 14 league away games under him, right? I think the last couple he wasn't there, to be fair, because he got sacked a couple of weeks ago. He's announced he's going to be coaching kids in Dubai. Plymouth go to the side with one of the best home records in the Premier League this season, Brentford, and they go and pull off a 1-0 shock with a late goal by Morgan Whittaker. Absolutely outstanding result for the Green Army, as they're known in Brentford, and they're through to the next round. But it was the only shock of the round. I mean, Manchester City, as I mentioned earlier, they won 8-0. That's how one-sided some of these games can be, against Salford, who are managed by the old Man United contingent, the class of '92, as we know them, Giggs. The two Nevilles, beat Nicky Butts involved with them as well. But no, we didn't see the shocks. We've got some good games coming up today as well. Bromley travel to Newcastle for a 3 o'clock kickoff. I must confess, I was on my daily walk on Friday and I watched Bromley train through some bushes. I wonder I'm not sure who the hell they thought I was, but I was having a little spy of them training.
You'll get a bad name.
Yeah, but they'd have travelled up to Newcastle. It'll be a good tie, that. They're both teams in very good form.
Yeah, brilliant stuff. Lovely. Aidan, we'll see you later on. Thank you.
And do stay with us, because in a couple of moments we'll be going through the papers.
First, if you fancy some winter sun, here's the forecast for some of the top European holiday destinations.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries, all sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
If you're about to jet off to the Mediterranean for some winter sun, then west is certainly best at this time. It's high pressure that's in charge across parts of Iberia into southern France to provide relatively fine conditions at the moment, but further towards Italy and around the Adriatic towards Turkey as well, we've currently got some heavy rain, even heavy snowfall across inland areas. This will be continuing over the next couple of days or so, but it's expected to ease during the forthcoming week.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
I'm Andrew Pearce. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Britain's newsroom. Weekday mornings from 9:30.
Mr. Motivator, he joins us now. Mr. Motivator, a very happy new year to you. Thank you so much for joining us on the show. There you are, bright and early. So how are things? How can we all kick ourselves into shape?
By the end of January, most people have thrown their New Year's resolution out the window. I think what's important is that we make a change for life, and we set ourselves small goals, and as we achieve those goals, then we reward ourselves. So in other words, you want to run 10K, you don't immediately get up and go run 10K, do you? You run between 2 lampposts and walk between 20. If you're not into running, don't choose running. If you're into dancing, that's great. If you're into any kind of movement, that is the way to keep yourself active, healthy, and also maintain your independence.
So, Derek, is the point that you keep it manageable and small enough that it's achievable?
Why don't we just find 4 exercises that you do for 1 minute each exercise, and you do that 4 times a day? Achievable, isn't it? That's only 4 minutes of exercise. And I guarantee at the end of the day, you'd have done 12 minutes, which is like your daily dozen. So there's your goal. I wanted to do a daily dozen of exercise lasting a minute each, right? And the first thing you could be doing is getting up from your chair, right? The moment you stand up, you incorporate so many muscles in your legs, right, that you're going to feel good, yes? So,
right, go on then. Get up off your chair, Adam. Show me how it's done.
Easy, come on.
Easy, yeah. Look at that.
Johan, the next thing I want you to do is to reach up real high. And if you bring it down, up
I'll
and
do
down.
that one.
Yeah.
For a minute, palms facing...
Oh, for a minute?
You're not flying at me. That's better.
There we go.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Thank you, Britain.
Thank you for watching.
Thank you for listening.
Thanks for subscribing.
Thank you for your support.
It's you that make us the People's Channel.
As we reflect on our journey so far, we're filled with immense gratitude.
You mean the world to us. We couldn't have reached this point without you.
As a very special thank you, we are giving you the chance to win one of 50 GB News thank you boxes. They're worth £50 each.
For full terms and conditions, and to enter, just go to gbnews.com/thank you.
I'm Bev Turner. Thank you for joining us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Well, let's have a look at the papers for you this morning with political commentator Claire Pearsall and the writer and journalist Emma Wolfe. Good morning, you two. We're going to wage war on waste, says the Sunday Telegraph, or the Chancellor is.
Well, yeah. Well, it appears that the support for the Chancellor is actually evaporating amongst her fellow MPs quite fast. Labour colleagues not particularly happy with her. She's been out in China. But anyway, now she's launching this major new drive to tackle waste and inefficiency across the public sector. Obviously, she really desperately needs to sort of stabilise public finances. There's been a real week of turmoil on the financial markets. There's dramatic sell-off in government debt. I think that long-term borrowing costs in the UK are now at the highest level since 1998. So this is her big plan, to wage war on waste, as if we've never heard that one before. But, yeah, she doesn't look as though she's in a particularly good position at the moment.
No, but I mean, you wonder if she's feeling the criticism or whether she, and maybe this is why she's launched another initiative.
But I think the problem is when you start launching all of these initiatives, they've all been done previously. Everybody wanted to get down government waste and bring up efficiency, and what they tend to do is then bring in very expensive management consultants to tell them where it is they're going wrong and where they're overspending. But I think that she is under enormous pressure to do something, and unfortunately this just looks like something. And it's grasping around the edges without looking at what is it that's got you into the trouble at the moment anyway.
Well,
with
14 years of Tory rule.
Well, apparently so, and 22 billion black hole, yada, yada, yada. We can go on with all of those kind of lines, but what is it that she's doing? Unfortunately, blocking herself in a corner by this pledge to not raise the three main taxes that an individual has upon them. So by not doing that, where are you going to get the money from? And it's looking very iffy as to whether they're actually going to bring that money in, because any money that they do have and the fiscal headroom that they had is eaten up now by the spiralling cost of government debt.
And also very, very low confidence. There's a good quote here. Growth depends on low energy prices, confidence and investment. And she has done the exact opposite. That is what people are saying. And when confidence is on the floor and at an all-time low, you're not going to get investment. You're not going to get that growth that they've been going on and on about. It's not exactly as Claire says. It's not about tinkering around the edges and these challenge panels. Challenge panels are going to go into every department. Well, how much is that going to cost? There'll be consultancy, won't there? There'll be lots of people being paid.
You do that as a government department on an annual basis anyway. Having worked in one, we were tasked with that job every single year. Where is it that you can save money? And in the Home Office, it was very slim pickings as to where we could save the money, but it's not unusual for that to happen.
Everyone's favourite political advisor, Dominic Cummings, is in the Mail on Sunday, Claire, this morning.
When you sort of read a headline and you go, oh, Dominic Cummings, yes, yes, because that's what we need at the moment. With all the turmoil going on in the world, what do we need more of? Dominic Cummings, it worked so well the first time round. This is a great scoop, actually, from the Mail on Sunday. It was Dominic Cummings has teamed up with Elon Musk. It looks like he's advising Elon Musk as to how best to interact with the British politician.
Well, aren't they actually thinking of setting up a new party?
The Start-up Party is what Dominic Cummings wants to do. Now, these are two very divisive people. These are two people who want to be disruptors. What are they going to gain from this? I'm not entirely sure. As I say,
Two people who've never been elected.
Exactly. They don't have to be accountable to anybody. They don't have to answer questions from Mrs. Miggins down the road as to how their bin collection's going. They don't particularly care for party political lines. They just want to be these great disruptors. I think it can only end in tears.
The headline just made me think, well, Musk and Cummings in a plot to sabotage UK politics. They don't need to do that. The Prime Minister at the moment is sabotaging everything all by himself. And as for starting a start-up party, I mean, people who want to vote for change are voting reform anyway. I can't see Musk and Cummings garnering a lot of support on this. They're just having fun and they're WhatsApping each other.
It's just, though, as you said, one heck of
mud
a
around.
for some journalists to have discovered that these two guys are actually talking to each other.
The fact they're in a WhatsApp group is just hysterical.
Yeah.
I mean, what else are they doing? They're sharing memes with each other, you know, passing the time of day. Do they have anyone else in their group? Or is it just them deciding what words to use?
Causing trouble.
Yeah.
The problem is it's vitriolic, and whereas that is quite entertaining, what it doesn't do is actually improve any outcomes.
No. Is it any surprise that it's vitriolic? Labour MPs literally vowed during their election campaign, they vowed to, like, end Twitter, you know, shut down Twitter forever. Of course Musk is angry. Of course he gets annoyed. Of course he's flinging mud.
It's not just the government, is it? It's Reform, it's having to go out, it's everybody.
Yeah.
Anyway, on that note, sadly, we're out of time. We'll see you later on. Time for the weather.
Despite the morning rain, it'll be a nice, warm, cosy day ahead. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, very good morning to you. This is your GB News weather updates provided by the Met Office. Misty and murky start to the day for some of us. There is fog out there with light winds courtesy of high pressure. That does mean the fog could linger for a good while throughout today, particularly eastern areas of England, also Northern Ireland. Some quite dense fog patches around, so it is worth taking care if you are about to head out and travel at all. There will be, though, some sunny spells around once those fog areas do manage to clear off, particularly across parts of England and Wales. Temperatures, though, still a little below par for where we'd normally expect them to be for the time of year, particularly in the far southeast of England, struggling in places to get above much of 2-3 degrees Celsius. But further towards the west, we're starting to see the ingress of some southwesterly winds, and that is feeding in much milder conditions, so 8-9 degrees Celsius possible here. Those southwesterly winds, though, will really quite strengthen for the northwest of Scotland, particularly around the Outer Hebrides and in the Highlands. We could start to see some gales developing during the afternoon and evening period. We'll also see outbreaks of rain moving its way in across Scotland, parts of Northern Ireland as well, turning damper and wetter to end the day here. We will manage to stay dry across parts of England and Wales, but again, the odd fog patch is possible. We will lose the frost compared to some recent nights, so it will be milder for all of us, but still low single figures for parts of England. And again, once that fog does manage to clear its way off, it will be parts of central eastern areas of England that see the best chance of some sunshine throughout tomorrow as well. Further towards the north and west, though, some heavier outbreaks of rain swinging their way in, a much wetter day here. And those southwesterly winds still very persistent, so it is going to be a noticeably mild day for the time of year. Double-digit figures for Northern Ireland and Scotland, which could lead to some snow melt of the snow that has fallen over the last week or so. So potentially some surface water issues as that falls over the next few days to watch out for. Otherwise, enjoy the rest of your day. Bye-bye.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
You can Demand. Good luck. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
And then fashionistas are keen to see which new trends are set to hit the catwalk.
Well, our next guest is very well placed to share her predictions with us after being a contestant on hit ITV series Dress the Nation, as well as being an upcycling and sewing consultant.
Wow. Joining us now is Tendai Murewe. I want to go back to you appearing on the ITV Dress the Nation.
Right.
Tell us about that experience. What was that like?
Oh, that was one of my highlights as an upcycling consultant. I learned to sew in my kitchen 5 years ago. And then, during COVID, just making masks. Then the next thing I was on a Dress the Nation, making dresses in front of TV. Yeah, it was just incredible. I think we all had all these clothes that we have, but we don't know what to do with them. So mainly I started with men's jackets, taking off the sleeves and putting it like a print on.
I've tried this. I've tried taking off my sleeves before. I now have about 3 jackets with no sleeves. I never managed to put them back on.
You need to come to a workshop.
You
need to come to a workshop.
I need an upcycling consultant. 2025, what can we expect fashion-wise?
I think bold prints are back. People are loving. I think you walk on the streets in frollos and oversized men's jackets.
So the exact opposite. We have drastically underperformed this morning. You're just saying not like us.
We just woke up this morning and thought it's winter, it's cold, it's grey.
Grey, miserable.
Is that not the way to go?
No, it is. I think because fashion is expressive. It's whatever you want to express yourself.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good morning. The naysayers pile on Labour as the party suffers a series of PR nightmares.
And the Reform UK leader, Nigel Farage, accuses Health Secretary Wes Streeting of masking the truth about rape gangs after he claimed that current public discourse could increase the risk of attacks against British Muslims.
Also, this is a week that saw borrowing costs soar to their highest in more than 25 years. The Chancellor desperately trying to claw back control, now promising to wage a war on public spending.
Pressure mounts on Sir Keir Starmer to sack the Treasury Minister, Tulip Siddiq, after calls for a corruption investigation into her London properties.
The Los Angeles fires rage on. Death toll now at 16. The blame, partly at least, being pointed at celebrity residents who've been breaking water-saving rules to tend their gardens.
Sub-zero temperatures continue as rare amber alerts for the cold are extended now until Tuesday.
If the big freeze is proving a bit too much, though, never fear. We're going to be checking out all the best spots to catch some winter sun.
As it's revealed, the average household bills have gone up by £13 thanks to green policies. We will be debating whether it's time to shatter Energy Secretary Ed Miliband's dreams of net zero.
Good morning. No Rooney, no problem. The Championship's bottom club, Plymouth, pulled off the only FA Cup shock of the day by winning at Brentford yesterday. Man United, meanwhile, prepare for the departure of Marcus Rashford. And in tennis, it's a washout on day one of the Australian Open in Melbourne.
It's a foggy start to Sunday out there for some of us. Join me later for the full weather details to see how things will develop today.
Good morning to you. It's just gone 7 o'clock. I'm Stephen Dixon.
And I'm Anne Diamond, and this is GB News Breakfast.
Just look at this new thing that's popped through. So one of our producers has found it this morning, and it's a new study that says people who walk fast are less happy, apparently.
What?
Yeah.
There are some people who do walk fast.
Very fast.
My big sister walks fast.
Does she? Is she less happy?
No, she's fabulous.
Apparently it's because fast walkers are goal-orientated and more introverted.
I'd say rubbish to that.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Some people are just fast walkers.
They have become very easily unhappy when things don't go their way.
No, they just want to get there faster.
Yeah, I do, yeah.
People who walk fast are perfectionists, so you're more easily disappointed, I guess, if you're a perfectionist.
Sort of a bit of a perfectionist.
Also, these people find it harder to maintain and develop relationships.
No, total rubbish. Well, who wrote this?
I don't know. The positive side, they say, is that fast walkers are actually courageous and confident, plus they possess an energy that is hard to match up to.
That's true.
But less miserable.
Come on, who's written that?
I don't know.
No.
I can't find
There are
it.
just some people who are fast walkers.
Yeah.
It annoys me because I'm a slow walker.
Some people are fast runners.
Yeah.
What's the difference?
Yeah, I know.
It's a study. But
It is a frame of mind, I think.
Can't find out from whom.
My big sister, she just wants to get there fast. She doesn't want to naff around. No. She doesn't like faffing, whereas I like faffing.
Yeah, nothing wrong with that. If you've got time.
I just think so. Yeah, it's just some people walk faster than others.
Yeah.
I think that's
So
probably about
what?
it.
Yeah. There are ologists who will try and read something
Excuse me.
into
Everything. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, well, yes. Yes, like, while you're wearing blue and grey or what sort of...
It's green. It's
What does that say about your personality?
Exactly.
It just meant that it was
Lively.
hanging in the wardrobe at 3 o'clock in the morning when you just had to wear something.
Yeah, exactly.
I
And
did deliberately choose pink this morning,
Oh,
though.
well, you should have told me.
Should
I've got pink here somewhere.
You've got pink there. I just saw it hanging up and thought, that'd be nice tomorrow.
Yes, you're in the
That'd
pink.
be cheery.
Means you're in the pink.
Does it?
Which is a good thing.
Anything to cheer up, because everything else seems to be falling apart, to try and find a phrase that's safe to say on television. It's been a heck of a week for PR, for Labour, for the government. It's all going to pot. Nigel Farage has reignited the debate over whether a national inquiry should be held into child rape gangs, just adding more fuel to the fire for the government.
Yeah, the Reform UK leader has accused the Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, of attempting to conceal the reality of the rape gangs after he claimed that the rhetoric around the whole subject could risk vilifying certain communities.
The Labour MP, Dan Carden, has broken ranks from Sir Keir Starmer. He's joined Andy Burnham calling for a national inquiry into the rape gangs.
Meanwhile, the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, has vowed to launch a war on wasted public finances, and she's ignoring the growing calls to resign after borrowing costs have reached a 25-year high.
Well, if you thought that wasn't quite enough, Labour is facing turmoil elsewhere, because the Treasury Minister, Anti-Corruption Minister Tulip Siddiq, who's the niece of the ousted dictator of Bangladesh, who's been accused of pilfering sort of millions of dollars, has been forced, really, to refer herself to the ethics watchdog over claims that she lives in London properties linked to her aunt.
That's all quite extraordinary and a bit convoluted, isn't it? But it's interesting that she has now referred herself. We're joined by political commentator John Oxley. Good morning, John. What do you make of this Tulip Siddiq affair?
Well, it's very difficult for the government. I mean, as yet, we don't know all the details. And obviously, this is coloured not just by the politics here, but the politics in Bangladesh, where her aunt has lost power. But, what is clear is that, Tulip Siddiq appears to have benefited from, wealth her aunt has built up. And there are allegations in Bangladesh that was dishonestly appropriated from public money. And for an anti-corruption minister, really, you have to be beyond reproach. There can't be a sniff of an issue. And there appears to be very legitimate questions here. And this is a big problem for Labour. It makes you wonder why she was ever appointed to the role when this was, foreseeable for quite a long time that something like this might come up, and raises questions of Keir Starmer's judgment. I mean, they are political allies. They are personal friends. And it starts to look as though he is, putting that friendship ahead of, what is fit and proper in these circumstances, and really returning to the sort of sleaze that he said he was going to come in and get rid of.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. It does look pretty grim. In the meantime, there's more problems in that there's a Labour MP now breaking ranks on the rape gangs inquiry issue. adding the pressure that's already been put on by Andy Burnham, of course, is a senior figure in his own right. Are we likely to see more people breaking rank now?
I think that's quite possible. Although we always have to remember, this is a Labour Party where a lot of MPs are quite new, and new MPs tend to be pretty loyal. Partly, they genuinely believe in the guy that got them there. Also, they're all trying to make their career over the next 5 years and beyond. So normally you'd expect people to remain pretty loyal, but this remains an issue with a lot of public interest, particularly an issue that is very relevant to some of the constituencies of Labour MPs, predominantly Labour constituencies where these gangs were acting. So I think there's every chance that this will build up a bid and that something will be forced out of Keir Starmer in terms of maybe not committing to a new national inquiry, but certainly reprioritising the recommendations that have come out of the previous inquiries and acting on those.
What, you mean doing a U-turn without it looking like a U-turn?
Well, that's always the skill in politics. I think perhaps not a full U-turn as such, but looking for a way to look as though he's acting and getting a handle on the issue without necessarily conceding that national inquiry, which there are good reasons to say you don't want that.
Yeah, that's not going to work, though, is it? I mean, because the temperature at the moment, and, Wes Streeting's talked about concerns about what this could mean for, the wider Pakistani or Muslim community in all of this. Of course, the vast majority of whom would find this abhorrent themselves. The one way to diffuse that tension is to relinquish, isn't it? And to have a national inquiry, to actually take the bull by the horns.
That's potentially one way out. The issue with that is, that is going to take a long time to happen. We know these national inquiries, they cost a lot of money and they drag on and on and on. So that's not necessarily going to take all the fire out of the issue at the moment, particularly if people are seeing political opportunities in exploiting it. So it's a really tricky position for Keir Starmer to be in. And he may be looking for, something that is more concrete and more immediately achievable to try and step around that issue. Because the risk is, if you call for a national inquiry, you then get into an argument about what its terms of reference are, who's going to chair it, how long it's going to take to report, how much it costs. And we've seen this before with lots of inquiries, that they end up going on for years. And by the time they report, the world has moved on and everyone's actually kind of forgotten about why we wanted the inquiry, because what they wanted was the fight.
We will see. We will see if they've still got a massive majority. So perhaps they simply don't care at the moment. But maybe at some position they will start to.
Yes. Meanwhile, as we were saying, Rachel Reeves, well, she's going to claw things back. She's going to wage a war on public spending, wasteful public spending. So it's our poll of the day. Do you trust her to do that? We'll bring you the live results throughout the day. Final result later on in Nana's show. And if you would like to take part, please do go to gbnews.com/poll.
Now, you remember you were talking about fast walkers. Angela's been in touch. Morning, Angela. She obviously belongs to one of these walking groups.
Oh, yeah.
She says our group has a fast walk and a slow-pace walk. It caters for all. I belong to the fast one because I can't dawdle. That's just me.
Oh, I'll tell you what, though, Angela. Get back in touch. Why when you see these walking groups, why do they have two walking sticks, two poles, and they do that? Because I would find that more distracting. Why don't you just walk?
I think that's the sort of professional way to walk fast.
But what good does it do, having two sticks like that?
Yeah, but a lot of people do, don't they?
Yeah, they do. I've never understood it.
It's like they're going up a mountain, but they're not.
Maybe so if you
just...
answer that one...
Yeah, please get in touch.
Now, the wildfires continue to engulf Los Angeles. More than 150,000 people have been evacuated from their homes.
The death toll, though, has now risen to at least 16. 13 people are still believed to be missing.
Well, amongst those people who've lost their homes, Sir Anthony Hopkins and Paris Hilton, just to name just two.
Yeah, and lots more have had to evacuate their homes, which makes their homes vulnerable to looters. And we've heard that that's a huge problem. Earlier on, we spoke to the journalist Caroline Faraday, who is in Los Angeles for us.
if you think about the scale of this, the Palisades fire, which is just one of these fires, is about the size of Brighton and Hove. So we're not talking about a small area. We're not talking about, okay, is that like the size of like, I don't know, a little, like an estate in a town. It is the size of Brighton and Hove. In fact, slightly bigger than Brighton and Hove now. The second fire, the Eton fire, I'd compare that to about the size of Eastbourne. That is the area that we're talking about. I looked up earlier and I thought to myself, gosh, these images are so reminiscent of when you see, you know, images of nuclear bombs just taking everything out. And I thought to myself, how big an area did Hiroshima, the nuclear bomb in Hiroshima, take out? It's 5 square miles. This is sitting at 32 square miles, if you compare it, and taking out everything in its course.
But luckily,
and for those people, yeah.
I was going to say, but luckily, thank goodness, not taking out anything like the scale of human life, like the bomb. But I tell you what, to come back to celebrities for a moment, it is quite extraordinary, isn't it, that the huge hotels are now, there are pictures in the papers today of major celebrities, big deal film stars with a suitcase and a dog under their arm, just queuing up to rent suites in these major hotels, which are still charging £15,000 a night, some of them. I mean, there are the most extraordinary scenes on all levels, aren't there?
Yeah, look, it's illegal to price gouge in this situation, but who says that people don't? But I mean, it is extraordinary because, you know, you think, oh, celebrities, they've got everything and money will protect you from everything. Actually, you've got your children's memories there. That's the same. And, you know, your home that you built and you know, they got to flee just the same. It isn't a protection. But obviously, you know, those who have lesser resources are suffering far more than somebody who's hauled up in a luxury hotel. But, you know, doesn't matter who you are, that fire came through so quickly that even if you are, you know, a big celebrity or own a movie studio, you probably have got the clothes you stood up in.
Dear me.
Picture of Dennis Quaid.
Oh, yes.
He's got a wheelie suitcase, and I think it's his wife who's just behind him. She's standing there with a wheelie suitcase outside one of these amazing Hollywood-type hotels, and they're just queuing up to try and get a suite in the hotel at the moment because the hotels are full, absolutely full, of major celebrities.
Well, I tell you what, it's a reminder, because we all hail celebrity, don't we? It's the culture we live in. They're just people.
Yeah.
Like the rest of us.
And I tell you what, the other thing I found is that a number of them have been very weepy and very upset at what's happening to them and to others. And a lot of other people say, well, why would I feel any sympathy for them? They're massively rich and they've got other homes anyway. But they've lived in Los Angeles all their life. They have a home with, you can imagine all of their, I don't know, all of their bits and pieces. They have families. They have children and grandchildren who also live in the same area, who have houses that they have lost too. So it's not just the fact that they are celebrities. They are part of the community. They've got family, and this is affecting everybody.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it is. You've got to have a degree of sympathy, but I've more sympathy for those people who've been left with nothing.
Yes, of course.
Anyway, look, let's focus on the weather over here because it is cold again, very cold in some parts of Scotland. Let's get the details from Jonathan Fortree.
A chilly start will give way to a lovely, warm afternoon. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, very good morning to you. This is your GB News weather updates provided by the Met Office. Misty and murky start to the day for some of us. There is fog out there with light winds courtesy of high pressure. That does mean the fog could linger for a good while throughout today, particularly eastern areas of England, also Northern Ireland. Some quite dense fog patches around, so it is worth taking care if you are about to head out and travel at all. There will be, though, some sunny spells around once those fog areas do manage to clear off, particularly across parts of England and Wales. Temperatures, though, still a little below par for where we'd normally expect them to be for the time of year, particularly in the far southeast of England, struggling in places to get above much of 2-3 degrees Celsius. But further towards the west, we're starting to see the ingress of some southwesterly winds, and that is feeding in much milder conditions, so 8-9 degrees Celsius possible here. Those southwesterly winds, though, will really quite strengthen for the northwest of Scotland, particularly around the Outer Hebrides and in the Highlands. We could start to see some gales developing during the afternoon and evening period. We'll also see outbreaks of rain moving its way in across Scotland, parts of Northern Ireland as well, turning damper and wetter to end the day here. It will manage to stay dry across parts of England and Wales, but again, the odd fog patch is possible. We will lose the frost compared to some recent nights, so it will be milder for all of us, but still low single figures for parts of England. And again, once that fog does manage to clear its way off, it will be parts of central eastern areas of England that see the best chance of some sunshine throughout tomorrow as well. Further towards the north and west, though, some heavier outbreaks of rain swinging their way in, a much wetter day here, and those southwesterly winds still very persistent, so it is going to be a noticeably mild day for the time of year. Double-digit figures for Northern Ireland and Scotland, which could lead to some snowmelt of the snow that has fallen over the last week or so, so potentially some surface water issues as that falls over the next few days to watch out for. Otherwise, enjoy the rest of your day. Bye-bye.
A nice bright morning will generate a lovely warm day, right through to the evening. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
I'm Emily Carver. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
We were talking earlier about the issue of Siri listening to you. Well, it's not just your own conversations being sort of harvested for data, but it's a problem with AI. So what seems to have happened yesterday is that Apple issued a alert saying that Luke Littler had won the darts before he had. I mean, imagine what would, if he then gone on to lose, how that would have looked. I mean, obviously, because he went on to win, at least they got the story right, but before it had happened. So what it seems to happen is that the AI farms existing stories, and what it has done, that's the alert. We can see the alert there now, and it also claiming that Brazilian tennis player Rafael Nadal had come out as gay, when actually a different Brazilian tennis player was actually mentioned in the original story. So what it does is you see that's branded as BBC Sport. What the Apple AI system does is it farms alerts that it thinks people are getting from the source, and then summarises them into
That's
one.
going to be my question.
Into one
it
alert.
looks to me like you would assume, OK, the BBC are reporting this.
Absolutely.
So the BBC News might be saying something else.
So it could happen to any news organisation.
This has highlighted a massive issue. I mean, having editorial judgment and quality control, because if this is going on, it's just contributing to the flow of misinformation. Yes. And we know that this is a problem on social media, people reporting false things. But if it seems to come from trusted news sources, that is a massive issue in credibility. I mean, if you had something like Reuters, who's a big news provider, doing this, you could hold people accountable, you could make changes, but when it's the AI doing it, I mean, what do? You're going to have to reprogram it in some way.
And if you just lost control, if you're a news source, you've lost control of what goes out, because it basically farms it, puts your logo on it, and sends it out, even when it's nonsense.
GB News, the People's Channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
I'm Tom Harwood. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good
morning. Well, it may be cold and horrible where you are, but there are some lovely sunrises around. I guess because the sky is so clear. This is the view, yet again, we did it yesterday for the first time, so a very similar view, from the top of our Westminster studios. And that is really quite a view of London, isn't it, with Big Ben in the middle there, the Eye over there, and...
There's a Shard in the middle.
There's Shard, of course there is, yes.
It's all very pretty. Very
it looks
pretty.
absolutely gorgeous, but it's so cold. If you've got a great sunrise photograph, or indeed just an outdoor photograph telling us what it's like where you are, still very, very frosty and snowy where I am.
Yes, it is where I am.
The roads are clear, but all the frost is still there on the pavements and on the grassy areas and everything. Still a real winter wonderland at the moment.
So if you're going out walking, maybe you need your poles. Nordic walking, it's called. With the. I thought the poles were because you were struggling to... But it's not. It's all about upper body workout, strengthening your core. Poles are expensive.
And it helps with your gait. Angela says, I've got one leg slightly shorter than the other, and if you walk fast, it helps keep you upright and not lean forward. It also burns more calories. There's lots of benefits from walking with poles, especially if you're walking on uneven surfaces, stops you tripping up.
Yeah, so there you go. So
it's
actually,
called Nordic walking.
Nordic walking, it's a big thing.
Yeah.
So maybe I'm going to have to buy some and try it.
Love to take a picture.
You do. I don't know. Maybe
Stephen out with his poles.
Yes, well, these look very good. These are on special offer.
How much?
Reduce from 109 to 69.
For a couple of poles?
For a couple of poles. It's a lot of money.
Yeah. So do you have to have specially made poles? Can't you just grab a couple of sticks?
No. Well, these because they've got a bend in the top, so these come out at a slightly different angle.
Oh, there's obviously a huge skill to it.
There's a thing to it.
Yeah.
And you can have lessons in Nordic walking and things.
Wow.
So it's a thing. Who knew?
I know.
Who knew?
We learned something.
Do it on holiday.
Yeah, absolutely. So for all you bargain hunters thinking about your next holiday, where are the best places to go?
Any of these, wet your whistle. Georgia, Algeria or Albania. They're amongst the top destinations recommended by friend of the programme and travel expert Simon Calder.
And Simon joins us now from somewhere exotic, I think, because he's ever travelling. Simon Calder, where are you?
I'm in Bradenton on the Gulf Coast, the west coast of Florida, and sunrise hasn't happened yet, but I hope it will be as impressive as the one over London, and I think it will probably be slightly warmer too. But always a pleasure to get up and talk to you two about the opportunities for travel, whether you want to go tomorrow, and I found some great deals there, or indeed plan your year ahead, and do take those walking poles with you if you want to. If you're doing any hiking, even if you're just going to beautiful Cumbria, surely the greatest county in the UK, and you're doing any kind of walking, it will save your knees, everybody, if you've got your poles. But of course, the lowest airfare prices, you won't be able to take any poles because they'd need to go in your checked luggage, and that will double your fare.
Yeah. Look, in these places, these top places to go, do we have to be a bit brave? And because, I mean, Tbilisi, Poros in Greece, Durrës in Albania, it's not anywhere I would think of.
Oh, look, these places are lovely. Right at the moment, Stephen, Tbilisi, the capital of Georgia, is very lively. The Foreign Office says it's still OK to go to at least the capital and most of Georgia, but there are pretty regular demonstrations. However, the extraordinary thing is that you wait all your life for a flight to Georgia, and then two come along at once. British Airways and EasyJet in a couple of months' time are both going to be starting flying from respectively London Heathrow and from London Luton to the capital of Georgia. There's going to be a big fares war when they do. I'm already seeing fares under £150, which for the distance, and you're talking here almost as far as heading across to North America, is extremely good value. When you get there, you will find an absolutely breathtakingly beautiful capital city of a country which is just extraordinarily scenic, full of lovely people, and with some of, well, definitely the best food and drink in the former Soviet Union I've checked.
Mind you, in the article you've written today, you say that sometimes the travel agents sort of get it wrong and they promote a place. They say it's cheap, it's the new fashionable place to go. I'm thinking of the Caribbean island of Sant Andres,
Yes,
which they didn't point out certain things about.
This was an extraordinary event that took place, fortunately, in the 1990s, when, of course, it's great to have a fantastically cheap Caribbean holiday. However, what they did was they put in charter flights to San Andres. They didn't point out, for example, things such as it being part of Colombia, which at the time was ravaged by civil war. And unfortunately, also, the catering wasn't quite up to modern standards. And I think people came back from the initial trip with 9 different varieties of very virulent stomach infections. So, but Colombia is still lovely. However, the places I've picked out, so for instance, you mentioned Poros in Greece. That's coming back, Jet2 bringing that back. In fact, you're not going to be finding that there's any flights to this very charming, very beautiful island just off the Peloponnese of Greece. But what it is that they are organising holidays flying into Athens, and then you head across town, get the boat across, and you are going to find this really unspoilt little backwater. Any Greek island that you can't fly to is almost definitely guaranteed to be more relaxing and charming, and probably cheaper than one that does have an airport. So this is a cut price alternative to Mykonos or Santorini. It will cost you about half as much.
What about North Macedonia, which is sort of selling itself as Lake Como on the cheap?
Sounds good.
It certainly is. So, North Macedonia, previously known as Macedonia, previously known as the southernmost part of Yugoslavia, is a really interesting Balkan country. It doesn't have any seaside, but what it does have is a large slice of the shore of Lake Ohrid, which it shares with beautiful Albania. And the thing is, you can kind of convince yourself that you are in a very chic, very beautiful location with sheer mountains on either side, and you can even take a trip around the lake very easily, very excitingly, making a couple of border crossings. And the town of Ohrid itself is a UNESCO World Heritage Site for the number of medieval monasteries. So you can enjoy all of that at preposterously low prices. Certainly, I'd say maybe a third of what you pay for Lake Como, even though it's considerably further, and you're guaranteed to have a fun time. It will feel a little bit alien because all the signs are in the Cyrillic script, so it looks like Russian, but lovely, welcoming people, and a very cheap trip. And while you're there, if you do go into Albania, you might think, oh, I like it here, in which case the big summer bargain by the seaside is also in Albania. It's at Durrës, and this is the main port for Albania, but it's also got a great long strip of beach, loads of great places to eat and drink. And you'll think, well, we were talking of the 1990s, you'll think you're back to the 20th century in terms of the prices. Incredible value.
Wow.
Well, that sounds good. I'm sold on that alone, Simon. It's been great to see you. Thank you very much indeed.
You. I mean, there are lots of people who like to go to unusual places, aren't there? 2 flights a week from Manchester to Ohrid in North Macedonia.
Which looks lovely, actually, and Tbilisi looks amazing.
Yeah.
So
it does.
Maybe we need to try it. Anyway, if you're hoping to jet off for some European sun this winter, here's the forecast for some of the top holiday destinations.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries. All sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
If you're about to jet off to the Mediterranean for some winter sun, then west is certainly best at this time. It's high pressure that's in charge across parts of Iberia into southern France to provide relatively fine conditions at the moment, but further towards Italy and around the Adriatic towards Turkey as well, we've currently got some heavy rain, even heavy snowfall across inland areas. This will be continuing over the next couple of days or so, but is expected to ease during the forthcoming week.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Well, if you want to get away, you'll need some money. How about £50,000 tax-free? It could all be yours with our biggest Great British giveaway. Here's how to take part.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
Teenage girls are out drinking their male peers in the UK at a greater rate than any other European country. Yes, more than a third of 15-year-old girls in the UK report getting repeatedly drunk, compared to less than a quarter of boys the same age. I suppose what I'd say to this is, boys, what are you doing? Pull yourself together. Well, joining me now is the editor-at-large at the Mail on Sunday, Charlotte Griffiths, and the former Labour advisor, Matthew Larser. Charlotte, you're going to have to speak up on behalf of girls the country over here. 15-year-old girls boozing much more than their male counterparts.
I think it's to do with the pain threshold, so we can handle hangovers better.
Do you get hangovers when you're 15 years old?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. I was drinking hooch and smelling...
Absolutely. Whatever happened to hooch?
Yeah. And I just think we can tolerate it better. Right. And I don't know, I grew up in that kind of wild child 90s drinking era. I'm showing my age a bit. And, God, we drank a lot as teenage girls. I mean, it's actually shocking now in retrospect.
Well, I also think in terms of boys versus girls, I wonder if we've got a bit of a thing about... I mean, the old cliché that girls develop quicker, they can become social quicker. They can certainly get into the pub more easily because they look older. Yeah. You know, because of makeup, etc. I wonder if the boys are all just, you know, in their rooms playing on their devices, as it were. You know, as people increasingly dominated by screens, whether in fact there's an issue about socialisation, about whether in fact, you know, the lads are not out there socialising.
They have little sips of wine in France from the age of like 12 and they're absolutely fine about it.
Yeah.
Whereas we all know what happens to British girls, because I was one of them. You turn, however, old enough to get a bottle of Smirnoff Ice, and boy, do you go for it, and until you're vomiting, basically.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got, in my opinion? The best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Aidan's got the sport, 7:36. Should we talk Australian Open?
Yeah, because any tennis fans who fancy a bit of action this time of year, they would be looking forward to the Australian Open, and it's a tournament that we associate with high temperatures.
Yeah, because it's their summer.
Australia.
Yeah, exactly. And I remember Nadal facing Djokovic in the final in 2020 in 30-degree heat, and it would prove to be one of the longest finals ever, and it was a real blockbuster as well. So to see it washed out all but from the action on the show courts yesterday would have been a bit of a surprise to most people, not least the organisers. And it means they've got a nightmare now trying to reschedule the matches because they only saw 3 hours action on the show courts. Nothing really got played on the outside courts as well.
Wow,
We've got some pictures
you
there
wouldn't
as
think
well.
that looked like Australia at all.
No, you wouldn't.
We are
You
seeing
wouldn't.
pictures, if you're listening on the radio, grey and dull and wet, wet, wet.
And it really does ruin the event because if you think about it, what we see on television is one thing. We see the play, that's the main event, of course it is. But anyone who's been to Wimbledon or the French Open, as I have, you can see the outside entertainment, the umbrellas, the parasols, the food outlets, the souvenir shops, all the rest of it. That's a massive, massive part of it if you're going there for a game day experience. And don't forget, it opens probably about 8 o'clock in the morning. It's an all-day thing all the way through to about 10 o'clock.
I mean, commonly it does rain in Australia, but usually it's over and done with fairly quickly.
Yes, it is.
And then the sun comes out and everything evaporates.
There is some play. We have started this morning about an hour ago, so we've got some play underway. I remember back in Wimbledon in 1991, the rain was so bad, Anne, in the second week, they had a massive backlog of fixtures and they had to reduce it from best of 5 to best of 3.
Yeah. Even Cliff Richard stayed at home.
Yes, that's right. That takes something, yeah.
I know. Well, there was that joke, wasn't there, when Tim Henman got knocked out of the semi-final and he blamed the racket and everyone thought that was a bit unfair on Cliff.
Oh,
dear.
Do not be criticising Sir Clifford Richard.
So Cliff used to keep Wimbledon going in those sort of rainstorms.
But look, we still think we're going to see Nick Kyrgios tomorrow. We still think we're going to see Novak Djokovic tomorrow and Emma Raducanu as well in action against Ekaterina Alexandrova, as we established during the break, didn't we?
Ekaterina Alexandrova.
Yeah.
Catchy name.
It is indeed. But she needs a big year. And as I say, I worry for tennis a little bit just because of the drug allegations against the world #1 in both the men's and the women's section. But hopefully we can get past that and everything will be resolved.
Yeah. Can we have a look at Arsenal v Man United?
Yeah, that's the big.
Some of the names in this are fantastic.
Yeah, they are actually.
I just want to throw them at you.
Oh, Kavincha, yeah, he's a good guy apparently. Kavincha Kvaratskhelia. I've not heard of him, I must admit. He plays for AC Milan. I think they're going to lose him to PSG. Now, the reason that's important is because AC Milan are looking for a replacement for him, and that looks as if it's going to be Marcus Rashford. He's another player who the January window the transfer window isn't that important because it's desperation signings. Everyone knows if you're looking for players in January, it's because your season hasn't gone very well. And so everyone charges a bit of a premium. Marcus Rashford has become a problem at Man United, as we've established many times on this programme. And I think he would go in this window. And that would, I don't know, I just think it leaves, with everything he's become and he transcends his sport, I think that it might solve a few problems for a few people if Marcus Rashford leaves Manchester United. And that allows the new coach, Ruben Amorim, to go ahead and plan without him. Incidentally, Kobbie Mainoo, who we saw in action for England last summer, he's been told to prove that he's worth a 200 grand a week contract that he's after at Man United. Gosh. He's only he's still a teenager, I think. So it's nice work if you can get it. But, yeah, I think he's 18 months left on his deal, and Chelsea are potential suitors for him. But we're going to see some big money exchanged in this window because clubs are desperate. It's as simple as that. But the price goes up when they know you're desperate, as it does in any market.
Yes, and as you say, it's nice work if you can get it, but sometimes your career doesn't last that long, I suppose.
No, that is absolutely true. I'll give you a great stat. Neymar went to play in Saudi. I think it was it was last summer or summer before. He's played 43 minutes because of injury. He's earned £110 million.
Oh, my goodness.
That is nice work.
You can't quite get your head around that.
That makes Rashford and Mainoo look good value. Look a snip, doesn't it?
Blimey.
It's incredible, isn't it?
It's stupid.
I know. It's worth it.
Money.
If you earn that much, you can afford to come back up before the 2 years and pay the tax on it.
Oh, well, you wouldn't want to do that. Why throw money away? No,
exactly. But this is the thing. I've seen, you'd be amazed, though, Anne, and we've discussed it before when we mentioned Boris Becker a couple of years ago in the early days of this of the channel when he went to prison. It's amazing how even the most enormous of fortunes can be frittered away quite quickly. Bad divorce, bad tax advice, gambling addictions, you name it, I've seen it.
Yeah, investment in dodgy deals. And
it's also the failure to adapt your lifestyle as well.
Yes.
Sometimes when you turn the tap off, but you don't, maybe you want to go to Harrods, but maybe you can't kick the need to hire a helicopter to get there.
Yeah.
Then that's where your money goes.
Yeah, I suppose it does.
We've had that. We've all had that problem.
We've all been there. We've all been there. Aidan, thanks very much indeed. We'll see you later on.
Yeah. Still to come, Claire Pearsall and Emma Wolfe are going through what's making the news. That's next. You're watching GB News Breakfast with Im and me.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news,
Will, please bring us up to date.
or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons,
Very, very curious.
we bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
With the dawn of the new year come new opportunities for the stage. Stefan Kyriazis joins us now to share how he started 2025.
We've got Sigourney Weaver, Hollywood star, coming in as Prospero in The Tempest. It's an experience. Sigourney Weaver has got this kind of patrician presence. She's always on stage, sat watching or stalking the area. But she doesn't quite get the Shakespearean rhythms for me. We've got more trauma for you, and we've got a little clip to run first. Cat on a Hot Tin Roof. I don't know how people's Christmases were with their families, but this is a very unhappy family, so you can feel good about your family, whatever they're like. This is Tennessee Williams' deeply unhappy story of a family in sort of plantation south. The patriarch, Big Daddy, is dying, although he doesn't know it yet. Everyone is manoeuvring around him. Everyone is pretty unpleasant, pretty unhappy. It's all based on nobody really telling the truth. Everyone's suppressing things.
Got one more thing for us?
We do, and suddenly sunshine, life, joy. It's Nutcracker, but in Havana. Which is from Carlos Acosta. It's a very Cuban feel. And again, we've got a lovely little clip to cheer us all up. Good. With that. There was no Christmas when he was growing up. Castro had banned it all. So we've got this setting in Cuba, and instead of magicians, you've got the uncle coming back from Miami, loads of presents. It's just full of joy, and you've got a reworked music. I love the Tchaikovsky score to death. But this one has been added, so you've got kind of Caribbean flutes and lutes and guitars. Huge exuberance, colourful, bright.
GB News, the People's Channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Right, let's have a look at the front pages for you at 7:45. The Sunday Times says the NHS crisis is so bad, nurses are having to care for sick patients in corridors.
The Sunday Mirror labels Reform UK leader Nigel Farage as 9 jobs Nigel.
Mail on Sunday has Elon Musk and Dominic Cummings reportedly joining forces to plot against the government.
The Sunday Express has a much more positive story about AI, artificial intelligence, being used to improve the effectiveness of IVF.
Sunday Telegraph has the Chancellor and her, war on waste.
What's the, excuse me?
I don't know why that made me swallow, but
no,
it did.
Where is he?
Deep breath.
Okay. for joining us to look at the papers and some of those stories in particular. Political commentator Claire Pearsall and writer and journalist Emma Wolfe. And thank you very much for coming back. Emma, let's start with disability benefit checks are being carried out at home.
Remotely, yeah. Face-to-face assessments for disability benefit claims are at an all-time low, lowest level since the pandemic. 9 out of 10 disability benefits checks are being carried out remotely by civil servants working from home. In fact, the DWP has the lowest number of workers actually present in the office. You would have thought that with things like disability benefit, it's quite clear that you probably need to see quite a few claimants face-to-face. And benefits fraud is a real problem. I mean, it's costing, in 2023, the latest figures were that it costs us, or taxpayers, over £7 billion. And we know there's been wholesale fraud. It's not just, you know, people saying they can't walk when they can or whatever. There have been cases of sort of gangs just literally manufacturing millions of pounds worth of claims. Yeah, so obviously face-to-face assessments were suspended in March 2020 because of the pandemic. But it'd be reasonable, I think, to assume that they could be now safely resumed.
But there's got to be plenty of people, hasn't there, who are very obviously disabled, who shouldn't be seen face to face.
I think that's...
I mean, there's got to be a balance, hasn't
9
there?
out of 10, though.
No, I'm not saying 9 out of 10, but I'm saying there's got to be a good proportion who really just you want to look at and go, you know, just...
I think we have to be really careful. There are those who are fraudsters, who are there to defraud the system, and there are those who are genuinely in need, who are physically disabled, and are being asked to prove that. A friend of mine has MS. It isn't going to get any better. It is a degenerative disease. It is going to get worse. And the questions that he is asked every single time, well, do you think you can perhaps go out to work? Some mornings he cannot get up. Some mornings he can get up with a lot of effort. I think we need to be really careful. It's hiring everybody who gets this kind of benefit as to be a potential fraudster, because they aren't. And a lot of people are going to be at a massive detriment. And also, the DWP estate doesn't allow for people who are wheelchair users, for example, to go to some of these face-to-face assessments. The buildings that they're in are not accessible to those people. So I think before the government has to clamp down, I think they need to look realistically at what it is they're trying to achieve.
I agree with you, but there are very, very different groups of people. Like you, I have a close family member who is repeatedly asked the same kind of quite demeaning questions sometimes. Can you walk across the room? Can you lift your hands above your head? When they clearly cannot and are not going to be able to. But then there are people who are claiming, and the benefits sort of, the umbrella has been, the net has been widened to include things like anxiety disorders, depression, things like that. So that kind of thing, you know, there are also people online, we covered this a few weeks ago on Breakfast, people online schooling, sort of tutoring people in how to game the system. This is what you need to say. You need to say you're suicidal, awful things like that. So it's a really tricky one. But I think we do need more than 9 in 10. Sorry, 1 in 10.
Meanwhile, the next story, Claire, that you've been looking at in The Times, is astonishing because a hospital is actually recruiting nurses, telling them that they will be nurses in a corridor.
That's right.
Their shift will be in a corridor.
Care.
Yeah.
And this really is just normalising the fact that people are being cared for in hospital corridors in A&E. Now, this is a particular report into the Whittington Hospital in North London, where they are actively recruiting nurses to deal with corridor patients. So you have people who are very poorly, who have attended hospital, being treated in a corridor with very little privacy, very little dignity, and this is seen as normal. Rather than trying to sort the problem out, we're now recruiting nurses to actually deal with it. What has happened that we are thinking that the result of any kind of reform is going to lead to this?
It's as someone who was in hospital in a corridor in my 20s, it is utterly horrific.
Yeah, I mean, the details in this article about sort of patients literally having to hold up bed sheets so that vulnerable or frail people can use a commode because they can't get them to the lavatory, or installing oxygen lines and power supplies in the corridors as a routine thing. The head of the Royal College of Nursing said what was once an extraordinary escalation measure is now commonplace across the NHS.
Yeah.
This used to be emergency, like you treat someone in a corridor because you need to. Now, the stacking, the beds...
But the fact that they're recruiting them and actually saying you will be a corridor nurse or a corridor sister, does that mean that if you've specifically been recruited to be a corridor, you can't complain about the conditions?
Well, yes. And what happens when Wes Streeting's great reforms take that away? Well, what's going to happen to the corridor nursing staff that have been recruited? I don't quite understand why you would specifically recruit somebody for this purpose.
No, just be a nurse.
Be a nurse and be where you're needed, rather than
but if you're a corridor nurse
that you're
and
a
you were
corridor
recruited
nurse.
as such, you can't moan.
No,
I'm more worried about the patients.
Well,
no dignity and no safety.
No, I was in it for a week. In a corridor,
In a corridor
for a week. For a week.
Wow.
That's a point.
I was treated in a
20s.
corridor for a night, and that was bad enough.
Yeah, I was for a week. It was awful. That was in Surrey. Awful hospital. Anyway, I want to cheer myself up, Emma, or maybe not, actually. Look at the Sunday Telegraph. Because I like... My favourite pizza. My favourite pizza is a margherita with sweet corn and pineapple.
I can't believe you said the
Pineapple
two things
and mushrooms.
that should not be. No, pineapple. I can't believe it's
majority
3 against
rule.
1.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I love pineapple.
Should not be on a pizza.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
Anyway, there's an Italian restaurant in Norwich, Lupa Pizza, which is clearly getting publicity from all this. Anyway, for a laugh, they think that pineapple is so wrong. Their head chef thinks pineapple is so egregious that they charge you £100 for delivery if you want pineapple on your pizza.
Okay.
And they cannot believe that people... No one has ordered it yet. No one has taken that big step. £100. The man said, it's so wrong, I would prefer... The chef said,
There's
it's
a
so wrong.
pineapple and ham pizza.
I would prefer
Hawaiian.
to put... He said, I would prefer to
Yeah.
put strawberry on the pizza, and I agree with him. No, pineapple should not be on a pizza.
Oh, yeah, pineapple and sweet corn.
Yeah, absolutely.
Loving
You should be able to
lovely.
have whatever topping you like on your pizza. I would be more offended by tuna on a pizza.
Yeah,
That doesn't
I don't
belong
That's
there.
wrong as
But
well.
people have meatballs on their pizza. and things
Exactly.
like
Oh,
that.
all sorts now.
Yeah, they do, but
stuffed
nothing
crust,
wrong.
all
I mean,
sorts
let's face
Oh, I
inside.
like it. I like stuffed crust.
I know, but I mean that pizzas are getting a bit out of control.
They are. But look, let's face it, basically, your pizza is an edible plate, isn't it?
It is.
Oh,
and I
my
think-
goodness.
So you put whatever you
we
fancy,
wonder why
yeah.
we have an obesity crisis in this country.
I don't think pineapple on pizza is really going to
that's
contribute much to the obesity crisis. It does taste nice. Warm pineapple. For some reason,
Yeah,
on a
it's
pizza,
lovely.
thin crust, none of this stuffed crust nonsense.
Oh, no. I like thicker the crust, the better.
No.
I'm a purist. Cheese and tomato.
Yeah,
Oh,
I
well,
agree with
that is-
margarita.
Yeah,
Basic
yeah,
margarita.
Right,
Yeah.
that's the
But the
basis
thinner
for
the better
agreement.
as well.
Oh, dear me. You've whet my appetite with that.
I know, I'm
I had
hungry
a
now.
pizza last week, actually. A week ago, last Sunday.
Envious of that.
I know, but
And I tried your raw sprouts in a salad, and it was lovely.
Yes, it's lovely. It's
Really,
crunchy and
raw,
nice.
crunchy.
Oh, yeah, there's one for you. Here's another one doing food stuff. If you've got a cauliflower, don't throw away the leaves. Wash them, olive oil, salt, put them in the oven, roast them till they go crispy.
Oh, I have to try that.
Really nice. Really
Telling this
nice.
into
I tell you.
show.
I should have my own
that.
show.
You should.
Right, you two, thank you. We'll see you later on.
The weather now with Jonathan Vautry.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, very good morning to you. This is your GB News weather updates provided by the Met Office. Misty and murky start to the day for some of us. There is fog out there with light winds courtesy of high pressure. That does mean the fog could linger for a good while throughout today, particularly eastern areas of England, also Northern Ireland. Some quite dense fog patches around, so it is worth taking care if you are about to head out and travel at all. There will be, though, some sunny spells around once those fog areas do manage to clear off, particularly across parts of England and Wales. Temperatures, though, still a little below par for where we'd normally expect them to be for the time of year, particularly in the far southeast of England, struggling in places to get above much of 2-3 degrees Celsius. But further towards the west, we're starting to see the ingress of some southwesterly winds, and that is feeding in much milder conditions, so 8-9 degrees Celsius possible here. Those southwesterly winds, though, will really quite strengthen for the northwest of Scotland. particularly around the Outer Hebrides and in the Highlands. We could start to see some gales developing during the afternoon and evening period. We'll also see outbreaks of rain moving its way in across Scotland, parts of Northern Ireland as well, turning damper and wetter to end the day here. We will manage to stay dry across parts of England and Wales, but again, the odd fog patch is possible. We will lose the frost compared to some recent nights, so it will be milder for all of us, but still low single figures for parts of England. And again, once that fog does manage to clear its way off, it will be parts of central eastern areas of England that see the best chance of some sunshine throughout tomorrow as well. Further towards the north and west, though, some heavier outbreaks of rain swinging their way in, a much wetter day here. And those southwesterly winds still very persistent, so it is going to be a noticeably mild day for the time of year. Double-digit figures for Northern Ireland and Scotland, which could lead to some snow melt of the snow that has fallen over the last week or so. So potentially some surface water issues as that falls over the next few days to watch out for. Otherwise, enjoy the rest of your day. Bye-bye.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Don't miss your chance to
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Figures released by the National Child Measurement Programme in 2024 found that almost 1 in 10 children was obese in the first year of school. Children living in deprived areas are twice as likely to be overweight as those in more affluent parts. Organisations like the Prepped Foundation are educating youngsters about healthy eating by giving them the skills to create balanced meals. TV chef James Golding has joined the foundation as the head of food education, and he joins me now to talk about the work. James, lovely to see you here.
Good to see you too. So Prepped used to be Table Talk Foundation, and it's now obviously Prep for Life, Prep for Knowledge. It's basically a charity to encourage kids to have a better understanding of food, but at the same time enjoy cooking and hopefully make better food choices in their life, as well as perhaps, you know, share the information we give them with their families.
Do you see them developing an understanding of the difference between healthy and unhealthy food?
Yes, I think that, you know, kids tend to sort of be taught a lot of this in school, but being able to actually ask questions to a chef and be able to cook with produce which they know is one, that is going to be tasty because they've tasted it, but two, open their eyes to food that they may not have tried before. I think that, you know, I think a lot of kids say they don't want to try stuff because they don't like the way it looks, but the way that we produce our sessions, you know, we encourage the kids to try, and I think it really does open their eyes. It's very easy, I think, currently to be able to make easier choices, say fast food choices or you know, that type of thing, and it's obviously giving people the ability to make the right choices, but also the skills to be able to do it. So I think it's something that needs to be addressed and something that really needs to be pushed, and that's what we're doing as a charity.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good morning to you. The naysayers pile on Labour as the party suffers a series of PR nightmares.
The Reform UK leader, Nigel Farage, has accused the Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, of masking the truth about the rape gangs after he claimed that current rhetoric could increase the risk of attacks against British Muslims.
All this in a week that saw borrowing costs soar to their highest in 25 years. The Chancellor now trying to claw back control by promising to wage a war on public spending.
Meanwhile, pressure is mounting on Sir Keir Starmer to sack the Treasury Minister, Tulip Siddiq, after calls for a corruption investigation into her London properties.
Over in Los Angeles, the fires rage on. The death toll reaches 16, but some are blaming celebrity residents who broke water-saving rules to tend their lavish gardens.
And sub-zero temperatures continue as rare amber alerts for the cold are extended until Tuesday.
It's revealed the average household's bills have gone up by £13. This all down to green policies. We'll debate this hour whether it's time to shatter Energy Secretary Ed Miliband's dreams and ditch net zero.
Manchester City cruise through to the FA Cup fourth round with an 8-0 win over Salford, but captain Kyle Walker tells them he wants to leave this month. And no Rooney, no problem. Plymouth throw up the day's only cup shock with victory at Brentford.
It's a foggy start to Sunday out there for some of us. Join me later for the full weather details to see how things will develop today.
It's just gone 8 o'clock. I'm Stephen Dixon.
And I'm Anne Diamond, and this is GB News Breakfast. We were talking about people being treated in corridors in hospitals, and a lot of people have been in touch and said, yeah, it might happen for us, but if you're a migrant, you'll never be treated in a corridor. You go straight to the front of the queue in hospitals and GP surgeries. I've seen this happen many times with my own eyes. That's according to Nigel. Thanks very much. In fact, there have been lots of people making that point. And didn't we hear that that's the case, is that if you're an illegal or legal migrant, you get shoved to the front of the queue? We heard that.
I mean, it has been said whether that can't be policy, surely not. But it's just, I mean, as I say, having been on a hospital trolley for a week.
I can't believe you were on it for a week.
It was awful. It was really, really awful.
What was wrong with you, if I may ask?
It was a diabetic thing.
Yeah.
And I ended up also, because I was being sick quite a lot, and so I had one of those tubes up my nose and down into my stomach.
But that's an obvious case for being admitted to a ward.
They didn't have any.
They just didn't have any room.
No, I got put in a ward eventually, after about a week, but it was awful. I was only 21, 22 at the time, but it was awful. And with no family in the area at all, and all the rest of it, just on my own in a corridor, it was absolutely dreadful.
So things haven't changed?
No, I thought it was bad then. That'd be in 1996, 97, something like that. Anyway. Let's crack on, because it has been a PR disaster for Labour this week. Nigel Farage has reignited that debate over whether there should be a national inquiry into the rape gangs. The Reform leader accusing the Health Secretary of attempting to conceal the reality of the gangs after he claimed public discourse could risk vilifying certain communities.
Now, that's all as Labour MP Dan Carden has broken ranks from Sir Keir Starmer, joining Andy Burnham in his calls for a national inquiry.
Meanwhile, the Chancellor now says she's going to launch a war on wasted public finances as she ignores growing calls to resign after borrowing costs hit a 27-year high.
And then, as if that wasn't enough, Labour faces turmoil elsewhere as Tulip Siddiq, an MP and a niece of the overthrown Prime Minister of Bangladesh. She's referred herself now to the ethics watchdog amid claims that she's anti-corruption minister, but that she lived in London properties linked to her ousted aunt.
Who's accused of pilfering £3.9 billion from public finances in Bangladesh. Let's talk to former Conservative advisor Charlie Rowley. Charlie, morning to you.
Good morning.
I mean, whichever way you look at it, this is a disaster.
It is, and it's a number of issues and events that you'd expect somewhere halfway through a parliament, not necessarily still at the very early days of a government. And this is obviously on the back of goods and clothes and glasses that were bought for Keir Starmer by Lord Ali, I think it was, and taking away the winter fuel allowance. Obviously, many people feeling the pinch now because we've got the cold snap upon us. To couple that with, obviously, economic news that growth has been reduced from 0.3% growth to 0 by the Bank of England, and the idea of we're going back to a 1970s-style economy with more borrowing, maybe more taxes to fund the projects that the Chancellor outlined in in her budget earlier on, towards the end of last year. So a number of things that are giving, I think, Sir Keir Starmer a headache, and things that I think he'd rather...
Do you think he is getting a headache over this? Because, I mean, you get the attitude from the entire front bench of the present government that they just don't care what we think, they're just going to do these things anyway. And when asked about it, either they ignore the question, or they just say it's down to the last 14 years of Tory government, or they just say it's because of this huge, £22 billion black hole or whatever, that we didn't know about.
I think that's absolutely right. And I think there's, the government have got to be careful, because I think you've got to decide how you're going to tackle these things. So I think the Labour government, they've got a huge majority, there's no doubt about that, but I think there's some misplaced confidence in where that majority came from. The Tories lost the last election. I don't think Labour won it. Lots of people stayed at home. There wasn't this ringing endorsement for Sir Keir Starmer and this Labour government compared to, say, 1997, where lots of people, I think, were very pleased to see Tony Blair come in on a new wave of politics. Sir Keir Starmer isn't in that sort of particular bracket. So I think there's an attitude of, well, we've got this huge majority, so we can do, yes, what we like, what we want, and dismiss people quite readily. But also at the same time, I think you're right, their strategy is also just to say, well, we've got to make these tough decisions, and, you can blame the last lot because they had 14 years to do all this, but failed to do it.
Well, that's an argument if you can see what's working. I mean, the problem is, look at Rachel Reeves, for example. I mean, the tough decisions she made in the budget were all to fix the foundations and generate growth in this country to fund everything else. But of course, it's gone in the opposite direction. So it's all right making tough decisions if they work.
Yes, I think that's absolutely true. And, you've got to go back to what the Labour Party said that they're going to do during the election. So they weren't going to raise taxes, so no increase in national insurance, VAT or income tax. We're now in a situation whereby, she hasn't got the Chancellor hasn't got the fiscal headroom anymore. I think she had about a £10 billion sort of, a comfort blanket there, which is, I think, reduced, because inflation is now up, that's been reduced to about a million, I think, or a billion. So it's not, she hasn't got that much money or that much room for manoeuvre. But they ended up putting up national insurance contributions when they said they weren't going to do it. They said they're going to protect pensioners when they've taken away the winter fuel allowance. So these are tough decisions, but they are decisions nonetheless. And it's now the challenge to, the Conservatives and to Reform, or any other political party that wants to capitalise on those failings of the Labour government, to say, well, OK, yes, there were failures of the past, but they would have made different decisions. And I think that the opposition parties have got to be able to say that, Labour, you are making political decisions. These aren't forced upon you, but you are choosing to take away winter fuel allowance versus something else, for example.
Well, yeah, great. Except, can the Conservatives do that when they've said we're not going to have any policies for another 3 years?
Well, that's the challenge to Kemi Badenoch, and I think, there will be a lot of people that will want Kemi to come forward with alternatives to actually set out what it is that she's going to do. I mean, she's talked about scrapping the tax that's been brought in on farmers, so she would scrap that. But we haven't heard too much else from her, and that is what has given rise, I think, to Nigel Farage and Reform, who does seem to be on a bit of a one-man mission to obviously capitalise where there isn't that opposition currently.
Well, it's interesting because, Stephen, you were making the point earlier, weren't you, that the way people talk about the Tories at the moment is that they potentially should be the opposition, but it's like they're not really, though. And that seems to be the position they're in. It's like we're all flailing around looking for another opposition.
You're right, I think, because there are so many issues and so many problems that the government have brought upon itself that we're talking about this morning, you would at least expect from His Majesty's, opposition, the official opposition party, to at least be part of the conversation about some of these issues. Now, Kemi obviously called for a national inquiry into the grooming gang scandal. That's obviously something that Nigel's also called for, and that's something that I think a GB News poll the other day said about 77% of people wanted, including now Labour MPs, including Dan Carden, as you say, and obviously Andy Burnham.
What do you make of Dan Carden? I mean, he's an MP that he's been around since, 2017 or something. He's someone most of us haven't heard of. He's not a big name. However, when MPs start to break ranks on an issue like this, I just wonder if this is the first crack and we're going to see a lot more, because they must be getting a lot of pressure from constituents.
I think that's absolutely true, and Dan Carden, I think, is a Liverpool sort of constituency, so not too far from Andy Burnham, who's obviously representing Greater Manchester. And I think what Dan has obviously concluded, similarly to Andy Burnham, is that, look, Andy Burnham is a Labour mayor for Greater Manchester that held an inquiry into the grooming gang scandal in terms of Greater Manchester. And the reason why he was calling for a limited national inquiry, but a national inquiry nonetheless, is because he tried to get to the bottom of some of the issues that were happening in his area, but he was unable to compel police, police officers that are part of the problem of the cover-up and not being able to investigate properly or turning up to... I mean, we've heard horrific stories of police turning up to the homes of the girls, the parents of these girls, and accusing, obviously, the girls of simply being drunk and disorderly, and that's it, and not getting to the crux of the problem as to, where the alcohol has come from, who's applied it to them, and whatever else has gone on, the horrific events that we've been hearing about. So, as a Labour mayor who's been able to say, I tried to have an inquiry, I couldn't compel police officers to be part of that because I didn't have the legislative framework or the powers to do so. So it does require a national inquiry, and I think people are starting to see that, including Dan Carden. So it's going to be difficult for not just the Prime Minister because he's the Prime Minister, but this is a Prime Minister also who's staked his whole career on being the former Director of Public Prosecutions, someone that should be going after these criminals, and he seems to be taking a bit more of a softer approach, or there's nothing to see here, or we've got the Alexis J review and we'll just implement those recommendations and everything will be well.
Yeah. That's enough, yeah. He was very strong on cracking down on people with hurty words, wasn't he, on Twitter? I mean, anyway. Charlie, we've got to leave it there. Thank you very much. We'll see you later.
Thank you. Fascinating too, isn't it? You can predict it. There will almost be a domino effect. There'll be more and more people going one by one.
I should think so. Now, you will have noticed, on a totally different matter, that it's very cold. In fact, it's the chilliest January we've had in a decade.
Which isn't helping the rise in flu cases this winter, because more than a dozen hospitals now have declared critical incidents.
Yeah, Carrie Johnson, that wife of Boris Johnson, has opened up about spending a week in hospital with flu and pneumonia. She took to Instagram, urging people to get the flu jab.
Yes, and in fact, we did look at this, didn't we?
March, you've got to the end of March to get it.
You've got to the end of March to be able to get a flu jab. Well, joining us now outside the Good Hope Hospital in Sutton Coldfield is GB News reporter Jack Carson. Morning, Jack. And how is it in that particular hospital?
Well, a lot less busy, I should say, than it has been earlier this week. It was earlier this week that the University Hospitals Birmingham Trust, of which the Good Hope Hospital behind me is part of, they declared their critical incident. At one point this week, the maximum waiting time at the emergency department at the Good Hope Hospital was 7.5 hours. Such has been the pressure on this hospital trust over the last few days. They have been able on Friday to stand down that critical incident they declared earlier in the week. They say that is only because of extraordinary measures that they had taken in the 72 hours after they'd declared that critical incident in order to be able to start restoring the care levels that they had been providing beforehand. But you mentioned that it is this cold weather that is causing a huge increase in flu cases. In terms of the numbers on those cases, what we're actually seeing now this December, which is the latest data that we've got at the moment, that there were 5,408 patients in hospital with flu, actually on average every day last week. That is the second highest level since the pandemic. Matthew Taylor, who's the chief executive of the NHS Confederation, saying that this is having intense pressure on NHS, that pressure is still continuing to grow, saying that flu levels have risen to their highest levels in hospitals since the pandemic. And actually, one of the big impacts on NHS trusts at the moment, and why there is such also intense pressure, is because of the illness that is within the community, particularly communities around here, that actually it's staff members that are being absent. Some 53,000 staff members in the NHS were absent per day on average last week. That is up from 49,000 the week before. So it's absences as well within the NHS that is causing that pressure, not just the increase in flu cases that we've seen, as I was saying, the second highest levels on average per day last week since the pandemic. But it is extremely cold. The UK Health and Security Agency have declared an amber alert. That started on the 9th of January at midday. It ends and has been extended to end on the 14th of January. That's Tuesday at 9 a.m. They say that is because of the cold weather, and that basically the advice is to check within people in your community, because particularly people over 65 may well struggle if they have pre-existing health conditions with this cold weather.
Yeah, indeed. All right, Jack, thanks very much indeed. If you are entitled to a free flu jab, it's worth, if you've not had it, it's worth looking into.
And certainly go to your pharmacy and ask if you can pay for one, if you think
Yes.
you ought to have one. Do you remember a minute ago we were talking about the fact that you could be fast-tracked if you turned up at hospital, if you were a migrant or whatever? Apparently it was, I remember it now, it was in the Daily Telegraph about a week ago, that indeed the fast-track system does exist in the NHS. It's called the 987 Inclusion Health. And apparently undocumented migrants and homeless people and drug addicts can be fast-tracked under that scheme. Needing an urgent assessment, they can ask for an appointment at A&E and be bumped up the queue on arrival. And then they're taken directly to a consultant for a more thorough evaluation.
Well,
puts them ahead of anyone else in A&E.
Yeah, right. Well, I can understand that with people who've got abuse issues. I can understand that with homeless people, actually. I think we need to have more care for the homeless. But illegal migrants, undocumented
migrants, yeah.
It's just... I have no words, frankly, for it. And it's not that we shouldn't have a humanitarian streak, but what about everyone else? And what about the pensioner who's paid into the system all their lives and are left lingering in A&E for 9 hours?
Yeah, Steve Barclay, the former Health Secretary, is quoted in this piece saying it's outrageous that those here illegally are prioritised over British taxpayers, and it reinforces once again the concern that the NHS has become an international service, not a national health service.
Valid point, I think, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right, anyway, the weather is a concern. Let's find out what's happening where you are with Jonathan.
Despite the morning rain, it'll be a nice, warm, cosy day ahead. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, very good morning to you. This is your GB News weather updates provided by the Met Office. Misty and murky start to the day for some of us. There is fog out there with light winds courtesy of high pressure. That does mean the fog could linger for a good while throughout today, particularly eastern areas of England, also Northern Ireland. Some quite dense fog patches around, so it is worth taking care if you are about to head out and travel at all. There will be, though, some sunny spells around once those fog areas do manage to clear off, particularly across parts of England and Wales. Temperatures, though, still a little below par for where we'd normally expect them to be for the time of year, particularly in the far southeast of England, struggling in places to get above much of 2-3 degrees Celsius. But further towards the west, we're starting to see the ingress of some southwesterly winds, and that is feeding in much milder conditions, so 8-9 degrees Celsius possible here. Those southwesterly winds, though, will really quite strengthen for the northwest of Scotland, particularly around the Outer Hebrides and in the Highlands. We could start to see some gales developing during the afternoon and evening period. We'll also see outbreaks of rain moving its way in across Scotland, parts of Northern Ireland as well, turning damper and wetter to end the day here. We will manage to stay dry across parts of England and Wales, but again, the odd fog patch is possible. We will lose the frost compared to some recent nights, so it will be milder for all of us, but still low single figures for parts of England. And again, once that fog does manage to clear its way off, it will be parts of central eastern areas of England that see the best chance of some sunshine throughout tomorrow as well. Further towards the north and west, though, some heavier outbreaks of rain swinging their way in, a much wetter day here. And those southwesterly winds still very persistent, so it is going to be a noticeably mild day for the time of year. Double-digit figures for Northern Ireland and Scotland, which could lead to some snow melt of the snow that has fallen over the last week or so. So potentially some surface water issues as that falls over the next few days to watch out for. Otherwise, enjoy the rest of your day. Bye-bye.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
All right, still to come. Is it time to ditch net zero? We're debating that next.
Britain's newsroom. Weekday mornings from 9:30.
Mr. Motivator, he joins us now. Mr. Motivator, a very happy new year to you. Thank you so much for joining us on the show. There you are, bright and early. So how are things? How can we all kick ourselves into shape?
By the end of January, most people have thrown their New Year's resolution out the window. I think what's important is that we make a change for life and we set ourselves small goals. And as we achieve those goals, then we reward ourselves. And in other words, you want to run 10K, you don't immediately get up and go run 10K, do you? You run between 2 lampposts and walk between 20. If you're not into running, don't choose running. If you're into dancing, that's great. If you're into any kind of movement, that is the way to keep yourself active, healthy, and also maintain your independence.
So, Derek, is the point that you keep it manageable and small enough that it's achievable?
Why don't we just find 4 exercises that you do for 1 minute each exercise, and you do that 4 times a day? Achievable, isn't it? That's only 4 minutes of exercise. And I guarantee at the end of the day, you'd have done 12 minutes, which is like your daily dozen. So there's your goal. I wanted to do a daily dozen of exercise lasting a minute each, right? And the first thing you could be doing is getting up from your chair, right? The moment you stand up, you incorporate so many muscles in your legs, right, that you're going to feel good, yes? So,
right, go on then. Get up off your chair, Adam. Show me how it's done.
Easy, come on.
Easy, yeah. Look at
no
that.
hand. The next thing I want you to do is to reach up real high. And if you bring it down, up
I'll
and
do
down.
that one.
Yeah.
For a minute, palms facing.
Oh, for a minute?
You're not flying a minute. That's better.
There we go.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Thank you, Britain.
Thank you for watching.
Thank you for listening.
Thanks for subscribing.
Thank you for your support.
It's you that make us the People's Channel.
As we reflect on our journey so far, we're filled with immense gratitude.
You mean the world to us. We couldn't have reached this point without you.
As a very special thank you, we are giving you the chance to win one of 50 GB News thank you boxes. They're worth £50 each.
For full terms and conditions, and to enter, just go to gbnews.com/thank you.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Time for the sport now. Here's Aidan. Tell us about Wayne Rooney. What's going on with him at the moment?
Well, he's actually taken a job in Dubai coaching kids. Now, that says a lot to me about his desire for the game, because he doesn't need the money. He hasn't needed the money for years. In fact, for 2 decades, he probably doesn't need the money. He's always earned good dough. But he's taken a job in Dubai coaching kids, and in some ways it keeps him in the shop window because it keeps him active. Yes, he can do media, he can do punditry if he likes, but why do that?
Punditry?
Yes, he's good. He's good. He did the Euros. He did the Euros in the last summer. Yeah, he's very good. He's very good. I don't think he has a problem connecting with players, but
he's not a very good coach, is he?
No, I'm not even sure it's that. Management, Stephen, these days is more than just coaching. In fact, it was always more than just coaching. It's a completely different skill set to football. How many top-level footballers can you think of? I can't think. Well, I'll let you know, I can think of barely any who've made top managers. Probably Carlo Ancelotti, but then you could say, well, he had loads of money at Real Madrid. So it's much easier when you've got a huge budget.
Not
but
recently, certainly. I can think of some classic names back in the...
Yeah, very, very few. Look at the 66 World Cup teams. Jack Charlton did very well, but Bobby Charlton was a very poor manager, as was Bobby Moore, as was...
Keegan was all right, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was pretty good, actually. He was pretty good. But then he always worked with big budgets. Now, I think the cult of a manager, the actual office of a manager, is a little bit overrated because, yes, a top manager can make a difference for the club. We've seen it many times. But largely, your budget corresponds to your league position.
It's a different skill set.
Of course
anyway.
it is.
Why do we pretend that if you're good at one thing, you're automatically...
Well,
it's like, do doctors make the best managers in the
Precisely.
NHS hospitals?
But if you look at, say, Rooney, part of the reason he would have gone to Plymouth is because where they are in the country, they have in the past struggled to attract players. And so having Rooney down there with that big name, that stellar name, would entice players to come there. But if you have blown your budget on the employing the manager and there isn't any money left for players, it doesn't matter who the name is, they're not going to come for a low wage, are they? But nonetheless, Plymouth, without Rooney in charge, they bucked the trend yesterday. It was the only shock of the day, actually. Normally we get a really big one, but they're bottom of the Championship with the worst away record, I think, probably in all 4 divisions. They go to Brentford in the Premier League, who've been doing pretty well this season. They're around about mid-table. They've only lost 1 home game all season. They've been in fantastic form at home, and Plymouth go and win there. They play well and they win 1-0. So it doesn't look good for Rooney on that point of view. It's almost like when he goes, they start doing well.
Yeah. Can we talk about, well, in terms of money, Kyle Walker?
Yes.
He's on about, he's had enough of Manchester City.
Yeah, it looks...
Will he make more money if he goes...
Probably will. He probably will. I mean, this is the it'll be Saudi, but look, we're speculating that it'll be there, but there might be some suitors. AC Milan are said to be interested. You can earn good money in Italy, but if you want to get away from the plastering of your private life all over the front page of the tabloids, well, you're not going to be safe in Italy anyway, either locally or suddenly, if you go there, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're not that far away. It doesn't necessarily mean the Red Tops are going to suddenly leave you alone. It did work for Ashley Cole, though, I think. 10, 12 years ago, he went to LA for a couple of years, and the emphasis on him switched a little bit. It did work. But you didn't earn anything like the money going to LA as you would going to Saudi. I mean, I said to you in the last hour, Neymar has played 47 minutes this season. He's earned £110 million.
My goodness.
So it's nice work if you can get it. Now, Kyle Walker is probably slightly past his best. We've seen evidence that he's not quite as, the imperious level he was achieving for a number of years. But he can still earn a few quid in Saudi, that's for sure. But it leaves City with a problem because he wants to leave this month. Normally it would be end of the season when you've had time to recalibrate, think about replacements. But City haven't got many defenders, and he's decided he wants to go now. There has to be a reason for that, and I think it might be related to his private life.
Yeah, but Pep Guardiola's just said, he can go. Of course he can.
He always does. Because he believes that nobody's bigger than the club. He believes that everybody is replaceable. If you get out of that way of thinking, then one player's departure can destabilise the whole club.
That's a very healthy attitude.
It is. Sir Alex Ferguson was like that all the time.
Make a big fuss.
All the time. All the big stars who he let go, he said someone else will come along. This is a brilliant club. We'll always attract players, and we are always bigger than individuals. And you know what? Every single time he's been proved right.
Yeah.
Sure, that's true.
Just very briefly, because I've got a bit money obsessed this morning. Kobe Mainu, is he worth £200,000 a week?
Well, he may be.
If he was meant to Man U.
He's at Man U already. But he's getting a new contract. He wants a new contract. And there's interest from Chelsea. The thing here is that due to profit and sustainability rules, it's actually beneficial to sell players that you produce yourself, because you don't have to pay the sort of duty that you have to pay, or you get financial incentives for doing that on your balance sheet.
Good too.
It's like dodging the CGT, isn't it?
But it encourages top players to sell their homegrown talent. We don't want that. It means that they only replace them with foreign players. So it's an unintended consequence of that rule. So it encourages players to produce players so they can make money on them. But ultimately, I think he's going to be a Man United player for many years to come. If they're serious about building their team, rebuilding, they need players like him to stay. And I think he'll get his £200,000 a week.
That's not bad for 19, is it?
No.
Aidan, thank you very much indeed.
Right, talking of money, how about starting February with 50 grand tax-free in your bank account? It could all be yours, because this is the Great British Giveaway so far. Would you like to take part? Here's how.
Don't miss your chance to win our biggest cash prize ever. An incredible £50,000. That's tax-free cash to spend on anything. Luck.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
teenage girls are out drinking their male peers in the UK at a greater rate than any other European country. Yes, more than a third of 15-year-old girls in the UK report getting repeatedly drunk, compared to less than a quarter of boys the same age. I suppose what I'd say to this is, boys, what are you doing? Pull yourself together. Well, joining me now is the editor-at-large at the Mail on Sunday, Charlotte Griffiths, and the former Labour advisor, Matthew Larser. Charlotte, you're going to have to speak up on behalf of girls the country over here. 15-year-old girls boozing much more than their male counterparts.
I think it's to do with the pain threshold, so we can handle hangovers better.
Do you get hangovers when you're 15 years old?
Yes. Oh, yeah. I was drinking hooch and Smirnoff.
Absolutely. Whatever happened to hooch?
Yeah. And I just think we can tolerate it better. Right. And I don't know, I grew up in that kind of wild child 90s drinking era. I'm showing my age a bit. And, God, we drank a lot as teenage girls. I mean, it's actually shocking now in retrospect.
Well, I also think in terms of boys versus girls, I wonder if we've got a bit of a thing about... I mean, the old cliché that girls develop quicker, they can become social quicker. They can certainly get into the pub more easily because they look older. Yeah. You know, because of makeup, etc. I wonder if the boys are all just, you know, in their rooms playing on their devices, as it were. You know, as people increasingly dominated by screens, whether in fact there's an issue about socialisation, about whether in fact, you know, the lads are not out there socialising.
They have little sips of wine in France from the age of like 12 and they're absolutely fine about it. Yeah. Whereas we all know what happens to British girls, because I was one of them. You turn, however, old enough to get a bottle of Smirnoff Ice, and boy, do you go for it, and until you're vomiting, basically.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your-say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
It's 8:32, morning to you now. Get your head around this. Research has revealed that wind farms were paid £400 million last year to turn their turbines off when it was very windy.
That alone added around £13 to your household bills.
Well, we all know Ed Miliband, the Energy Secretary, is firmly set on pursuing a green agenda, which is obviously being funded by the taxpayer.
But has it gotten to the point where we need to rethink net zero? So it's not us, the taxpayer, who pay the price. Debating this for us this morning, Associate Director at the Adam Smith Institute, Maxwell Marlowe, and Associate Professor of Natural Sciences at Bangor University, Christian Dunn. Good morning, both. OK, where do we start? Should we ditch net zero? Who wants to take this up? Maxwell. First of all.
Thank you very much. Yes, well, we can see that net zero is an intensely expensive and impoverishing ideology. If it were so good for the economy, if it were so good for energy, then you wouldn't need the government to interfere at all. You'd have the big energy companies investing their shareholders' money at God knows what rate straight into these clean systems. What we've been seeing for the past couple of years is a divestment from those systems from the big energy producers, BP, Shell, even though they were very enthusiastic about it to start with. What we can see from this, therefore, is that the government will have to pick up the tab, which means you and I, as taxpayers, will pick up the tab, all for an ideology which is giving up on us. Let's see, China have higher per capita CO2 emissions than the UK, and that's going to increase. India, likewise, in the future, and the USA too. We're small fish in a very big pond, and we are swimming around in circles.
Christian, and I know you think something needs to be done, but are we going at this too gung-ho? Should we be considering this more carefully?
I think when you said, should we be rethinking net zero, I think it's a really good way of phrasing it. We must achieve net zero. In fact, actually, as a natural scientist that studies this, we have to go beyond that. We have to be net negative. However, that being said, we need to do this in a pragmatic way, which isn't just about grabbing political headlines or a few votes in certain areas. We need to be doing this in a very mature and sensible way, which is going to take consideration of perhaps uncomfortable decisions for our country. One of those is got to be nuclear energy. We have to consider using nuclear energy in this country. Yes, renewables are fantastic. I know they have issues, of course, but renewables have to be part of the solution, but they are only part of the solution. We must look at more, I say uncomfortable, but it shouldn't be uncomfortable, but nuclear as well. But we also have to look at how we're using our land, how we're constructing our buildings. We've got this huge plan for more properties. Fantastic. So, but let's make sure that they are built in a way which is automatically going to reduce emissions, but also future-proof them for the changing climate. Because no matter what we do, we are facing a changing climate, and I think we have to accept that, and we must start adapting to that. And that doesn't have to be masses of money, negativity all the time. It could be incredibly positive. We could be living in a greener, healthier, and cleaner and better place. But we have to do it in a pragmatic way. We can't just be grabbing political headlines. This problem is too big for politics, you know, if I could say that.
Maxwell?
I would completely agree about nuclear. The problem is the Green lobby have gotten in the way of nuclear, historically and currently. Hinkley Point C is almost double the price because of major interventions made by Green quangos against the government, meaning that, for example, we had something called a fish disco, which held it up, which was that you need water to cool down a nuclear reactor, so they drew water off the nearest river, and Green quangos came in, said, no, you can't do that, so the government had to expend millions and millions of pounds commissioning research to put underwater speakers to play a very specific type of 1990s disco music to ward off the fish, which increased prices, delayed the project and put more CO2 in the atmosphere therefore. You're right, we have to be pragmatic. Which means, I think, opening up those fracking wells up across England and reopening the North Sea. We need to remain economically competitive in order to give everyone a good lifestyle and prosperity. God, we're feeling it at the moment with high taxes, low growth, and money falling out of our pockets. We need to be careful not to put the economy into a hell dive. And I'm very concerned that we're going to be having that if we continue this insane, ideological, unpragmatic net zero agenda.
Would you agree with that, Christian? I mean, in terms of fracking is a contentious issue, especially if you live in a fracking area. However, things like reopening the North Sea and what have you, to smooth, but actually also slow down the transition. Would you go as far as that?
I think we can't slow down what we're doing. In many ways, we have to speed it up. That being said, we have to accept that to have modern society, we must have bridging technologies, bridging fuels. So if necessary, we must look at whatever we can do there. But we have to then be ramping up in other areas. And for me, example, getting this not net zero, but net negative, getting carbon sequestered from the atmosphere, using natural ecosystems, that's forests, that's wetlands, that's actually improving our landscape in many areas. That has to be taken into consideration as well and done at the same time. And I think the issue here, I think we've probably got an agreement between us in many ways, but also definitely kind of disagreements as well. And I think we're both, if I say sides to the argument, I always don't like that because I don't think it should be a fight, but let's use that kind of analogy now. Both sides have to come together as well. We say Green lobby have stopped it because of X, Y, and Z. I'm probably classed as the Green lobby. I don't want to be stopping things. I want to be taking things forward, but in a pragmatic way. So perhaps myself, my Green lobby folk, we have to be open to ideas as well, but so does, if I hate to use it, but the other side does as well. How can we work together to achieve this? Politics is, this is too big a problem for one party to solve.
Is there a cheaper way we could be achieving net zero then? Cheaper?
I would suggest what we have to be doing is using nature-based solutions. This is using our landscape to sequester carbon. We have got, for example, wetlands. We've lost 75% of our wetlands in the past 200 years. They are the best ways, forget your forests, they're great, but wetlands are the best way to sequester, store and capture carbon. We've destroyed so many of those, and we're seeing the consequences of that now because we're having more flooding and we're having more drought. Wetlands act as this fantastic sponge in our landscape. They're also incredibly biodiverse, they're also great for our well-being, huge advantages. If we could invest a relatively minor amount of money in bringing back, restoring those wetland habitats, we would have huge advantages, not just carbon sequestration, but that is crucially one of the reasons why we need to do that. And it is a relatively affordable way to remove emissions from the atmosphere.
Just we're almost out of time, Maxwell. Just in 20 seconds, would you agree with something like that?
I would agree. There's some very exciting stuff we're doing at the Adam Smith Institute, looking at private markets in nature, which could essentially put a penguin in your pension and could be very profitable for you. So there are great ways to reach across the aisle here, and I'm just concerned that the government aren't listening.
Well, I think the government should listen to you two together, frankly. Very good.
Yeah.
Maxwell, Christian, as always, good to see you. Thanks very much indeed.
Right, it's 8:40 already. Still to come, Claire Pearsall and Emma Wolfe going through the papers. First of all, though, if you're in search of some winter sun, here is the forecast for some of the top European holiday destinations.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries, all sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
If you're about to jet off to the Mediterranean for some winter sun, then west is certainly best at this time. It's high pressure that's in charge across parts of Iberia into southern France to provide relatively fine conditions at the moment, but further towards Italy and around the Adriatic towards Turkey as well, we've currently got some heavy rain, even heavy snowfall across inland areas. This will be continuing over the next couple of days or so, but is expected to ease during the forthcoming week.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news,
Will, please bring us up to date.
or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons,
Very, very curious.
we bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
And fashionistas are keen to see which new trends are set to hit the catwalk.
Well, our next guest is very well placed to share her predictions with us after being a contestant on hit ITV series Dress the Nation, as well as being an upcycling and sewing consultant.
Wow. Joining us now is Tendai Murewe. I want to go back to you appearing on the ITV Dress the Nation.
Right.
Tell us about that experience. What was that like?
Oh, that was one of my highlights as an upcycling consultant. I learned to sew in my kitchen 5 years ago. And then, during COVID, just making masks. Then the next thing I was on a Dress the Nation, making dresses in front of TV. Yeah, it was just incredible. I think we all had all these clothes that we have, but we don't know what to do with them. So mainly I started with men's jackets, taking off the sleeves and putting it like a print on.
I've tried this. I've tried taking off my sleeves before. I now have about 3 jackets with no sleeves. I never managed to put them back on.
You need to come to a workshop.
You need to come to a
I need an
workshop.
upcycling consultant. 2025. What can we expect, fashion-wise?
I think bold prints are back. People are loving. I think you walk on the streets in frollals and oversized men's jackets.
So the exact opposite. We have drastically underperformed this morning. You're just saying not like us.
We just woke up this morning and thought it's winter, it's cold, it's grey.
Grey, miserable.
Is that not the way to go?
No, it is. It's still, I think because fashion is expressive. It's whatever you want to express yourself.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
8:45, time for the papers then with Claire Pearsall and Emma Wolfe. Morning, you two. Let's talk, look at the Sunday Mirror and look at 9 jobs, Nigel. What a busy man.
Exactly, working hard. The Mirror is claiming that Nigel Farage earned over £571,000 in less than 6 months.
Well, lucky him.
From 9 different jobs.
Frankly.
Yeah, despite styling himself as a man of the people, and they've managed to dredge up someone in Clacton who thinks this is outrageous, who also happens to be running for the Labour government.
Oh, yes,
Not surprising.
His Labour opposition in the election.
I would say good for Nigel. He's clearly working very, very hard. He says, I work more hours than most people could even contemplate.
I know, I don't know where he gets the energy.
No, but I do think that once you become a Member of Parliament, you actually should focus on looking after your constituents. And there is a big argument around second jobs for MPs, and it's been brewing up for some time.
Second? We're on 9.
Exactly. So I think that perhaps he'll be sort of higher up the list looking at that one. So I do think that you need to be a little careful.
Yeah, well, I would agree, but one of the jobs for which he's paid an extraordinary amount of money is this advert on YouTube where he's for a gold company, gold bullion company.
Gold bullion.
How the heck he landed that, I do not know.
And it's
however,
a lot.
You go and you shoot it and that's it.
Yeah.
So it's not detracting from his work as an MP, is it?
No, but there's an awful lot of other jobs that he has, bearing in mind that's only one of a number, that I think could take you away from doing the job you are employed by the people to do. So I think that we need to be a bit careful when we look at MPs and their outside interests. And, it's been a great big argument. And when the Conservatives were in power, everybody was pointing the finger at some people who were lawyers, judges or whatever, saying, why should you earn much more outside? Why aren't you paying attention to your constituents? So it works all ways. So it'd be interesting to see if Labour have the guts to actually do anything about it, or if they're just going to harp on it at the sidelines, feeling a little bit jealous that he's getting a lot of coverage and they're not.
Yeah, well, yeah.
I think a lot of it is, as you say, a lot of money for really quite, little things. TikTok influencer, being an influencer on Twitter, filming these cameo videos where you can give someone a birthday message and you charge them lots of money. That kind of stuff doesn't probably take a lot of time. But I'd be more concerned about outside interests, i.e. undue influence, not with Nigel Farage, but with people kind of, selling cash in return for influence or access to the lobby or anything like that. So I think.
But then you could argue that being an influencer
in the wider realm
online and using your platform as an MP is not the correct use of that particular platform. I think you have to be careful.
In terms of being an influencer, I think that just means that you're putting a lot of stuff online to the point where you can make money out of it.
Exactly.
As long as it doesn't cross that line to your parliamentary work.
Lots of them are not spending a lot of time in their constituency following up damp problems for Mrs Miggins or whatever. I don't know why she's popping up again in the programme.
Mrs Miggins, she's very popular.
Famous constituent.
She's very popular. Claire, can we have a look at the Sunday Times and the licence? Now, this I saw this and thought, great, the licence fee could be scrapped.
Yes.
But we'd just have to pay it in a different way.
Yes, this is the Culture Secretary, Lisa Nandy, has come up with an innovative idea that perhaps we scrap the licence fee for the BBC, but just fund it through general taxation. And you sort of look at it and you think, OK, but I thought we didn't have enough money to do all of the things that the Labour government wanted to do with the money that we don't have because of the black hole, etc., etc. But you want to be able to fund the BBC through it, through some kind of building society mutual sort of setup, which is interesting because that would make all of us that pay into the tax system members of this mutual. Can you imagine an AGM for the BBC? Where would they host that? I think that pretty much everybody would want to turn up and have their say if you were going to have control over what the BBC did. So it's going to be another ongoing argument as to what you do with the BBC. There are a lot of people who are against the licence fee, but how do you want to keep it? How would you like it to act in the future? Nobody seems to be clear on the answer.
I'm sorry, the BBC is too complicated now. Where there's lots of arguments to say, you shouldn't have adverts. But then you look at something, we love Doctor Who. Doctor Who is now part owned by Disney and all the rest of it. So there's all these corporate deals going on over which we don't seem to see any benefit.
Yeah.
So why just commercialise it?
I know, I don't understand why they have special privilege. So many young people now absolutely don't watch the BBC. They're just YouTube, TikTok, you know, they're online, that's it. They're not watching
There's no
any
doubt
of that.
the clock is
They're not
ticking
watching
against
linear
the BBC,
TV, exactly.
And the way it is funded,
And as for the hounding by the TV licensing agencies about the licence fee and about the fact that you can't prove that, you know, it's just...
I mean, next generations, you only have to talk to anyone under 25 or maybe even under 30.
They are not.
They just don't watch television the way we did.
No, they don't. I mean, they are mainly online. That's where they get their content from, or streaming services, because they want to watch what they want, when they want, where they want, and they're not stuck to a TV schedule like we always used to be in the past. So it is, I think it needs to change, but how it changes is a conversation that's going to go on for some time.
Yeah. Do you fancy a man with a beard, Emma?
I really don't like beards. I know it's horrible to say. I've got real pogonophobia. I just
Pogonophobia?
I've never dated a man with a beard. I couldn't kiss someone with a beard. I don't know what the thing about beards is.
Go on,
but that's
have a
irrelevant. No thanks. I just wouldn't want a face full of facial hair. I think it's horrid. Anyway, that's totally irrelevant. Marines, the Royal Marines, can now have beards for the first time. Yeah. It is fine. This is part of a move to tackle the recruitment crisis. They've sort of widened the parameters. It's now fine. But no, they've got to be quite neat, full set. No caveman beards. I don't understand this. I've always thought that there's sort of, you know, the thing about tattoos as well, tattoos and beards. Surely we want our fighting forces to be as scary as possible, to have wild caveman beards and big tattoos, and wouldn't that be scarier?
Yes, it would be scary.
Well, except a lot of it, as boring as it is, it's like with the haircuts.
Yeah.
It's all to do with the gas masks.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you have you've got to have your head shaved at the side so you get skin contact with the mask.
And it's the same with the
beard.
face.
So you can't...
But it's also to do with discipline, isn't it? Looking good on parade,
there is
short
an
back
element
and
of
sides,
looking tidy.
Yeah. But there are practical measures to it.
Yeah, and it's also if you're using a firearm. If you have a long beard, and of course, if you're crouching down, you don't need that to be stuck.
But
in
if you're holding it like that, I'd be worried, Claire.
Well,
to be
obviously, am I a member of the armed forces? No. There'll be many people shouting at the television now saying you're rubbish. But it was just an illustrative.
Very good.
That would be a very long beard.
Yeah.
Well, no, facial hair can, because you do put your face quite close if you're leaning down. If you're a sniper, for example, then you're going to be quite close up.
Yeah, I sort of think if you want a beard, fine, but it's got to be neat, short, tidy.
Yeah,
it's fine enough.
Can we talk about a brainy dog?
Yes.
Claire? The Mail on Sunday has got this story about a genius border collie.
This is where you're going to get everybody writing in about how clever their dog is.
Yeah.
But apparently this has been some kind of test has been done as to whether dogs can remember words. And there is a particular border collie who can now remember over 200 words, so names of toys. So it's not just... Mr. Snuffy or whatever it is. It's, you know, go and get the broccoli toy. And they would go and get it, and they remember things. And I think border collies are pretty clever.
They're meant to be very intelligent, aren't they?
They are. I mean, I'm not sure what the use of this would be. I mean, I've got cats. They're very smart.
Well,
I think they know more than 200 words.
If it's a support dog, for instance.
Yeah, and I think, but sometimes the majority of dogs learn by the tone of your voice.
Yeah.
And when you're using words, and they recognise, they pick up on things. I mean, you know, dogs are smart. You know, cats arguably are smarter, but they just choose not to be.
I can imagine how many dogs would be very useful for, you know, find my mobile phone.
Yes.
Or where did I put the remote?
And they've had dogs that can sense and smell cancer and pick up all sorts of conditions.
Yeah, you can.
Or anxiety and distress and that kind of thing. Their owners.
My dog knows what the remote is.
Really?
Yes. Just had to buy a new one, arrived last night. He's very good at knowing what the remote is and then eating it.
Chews it up.
Yeah.
It's just, you know, quality control.
It's our fourth remote in a year.
OK.
That's devastating.
Yes, not very happy about that one, but there you go. Bad boy. Right, you two, thank you very much indeed. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much. Let's find out about the weather.
A chilly start will give way to a lovely, warm afternoon. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, very good morning to you. This is your GB News weather updates provided by the Met Office. Misty and murky start to the day for some of us. There is fog out there with light winds courtesy of high pressure. That does mean the fog could linger for a good while throughout today, particularly eastern areas of England, also Northern Ireland. Some quite dense fog patches around, so it is worth taking care if you are about to head out and travel at all. There will be, though, some sunny spells around once those fog areas do manage to clear off, particularly across parts of England and Wales. Temperatures, though, still a little below par for where we'd normally expect them to be for the time of year, particularly in the far southeast of England, struggling in places to get above much of 2-3 degrees Celsius. But further towards the west, we're starting to see the ingress of some southwesterly winds, and that is feeding in much milder conditions, so 8-9 degrees Celsius possible here. Those southwesterly winds, though, will really quite strengthen for the northwest of Scotland, particularly around the Outer Hebrides and in the Highlands. We could start to see some gales developing during the afternoon and evening period. We'll also see outbreaks of rain moving its way in across Scotland, parts of Northern Ireland as well, turning damper and wetter to end the day here. We will manage to stay dry across parts of England and Wales, but again, the odd fog patch is possible. We will lose the frost compared to some recent nights, so it will be milder for all of us, but still low single figures for parts of England. And again, once that fog does manage to clear its way off, it will be parts of central eastern areas of England that see the best chance of some sunshine throughout tomorrow as well. Further towards the north and west, though, some heavier outbreaks of rain swinging their way in, a much wetter day here. And those southwesterly winds still very persistent, so it is going to be a noticeably mild day for the time of year. Double-digit figures for Northern Ireland and Scotland, which could lead to some snow melt of the snow that has fallen over the last week or so. So potentially some surface water issues as that falls over the next few days to watch out for. Otherwise, enjoy the rest of your day. Bye-bye.
A nice bright morning will generate a lovely warm day, right through to the evening. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
You could be good luck. Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
Teenage girls are out drinking their male peers in the UK at a greater rate than any other European country. Yes, more than a third of 15-year-old girls in the UK report getting repeatedly drunk, compared to less than a quarter of boys the same age. I suppose what I'd say to this is, boys, what are you doing? Pull yourself together. Well, joining me now is the editor-at-large at the Mail on Sunday, Charlotte Griffiths, and the former Labour advisor, Matthew Larzer. Charlotte, you're going to have to speak up on behalf of girls the country over here. 15-year-old girls boozing much more than their male counterparts.
I think it's to do with the pain threshold, so we can handle hangovers better.
Do you get hangovers when you're 15 years old?
Yes. Oh, yeah. I was drinking hooch and smelling...
Absolutely. Whatever happened to hooch?
Yeah. And I just think we can tolerate it better. Right. And I don't know, I grew up in that kind of wild child 90s drinking era. I'm showing my age a bit. And, God, we drank a lot as teenage girls. I mean, it's actually shocking now in retrospect.
Well, I also think in terms of boys versus girls, I wonder if we've got a bit of a thing about... I mean, the old cliché that girls develop quicker, they can become social quicker. They can certainly get into They get into the pub more easily because they look older.
Yeah.
You know, because of makeup, etc. I wonder if the boys are all just, you know, in their rooms playing on their devices, as it were. You know, as people increasingly dominated by screens. Whether, in fact, there's an issue about socialisation, about whether, in fact, you know, the lads are not out there socialising.
They have little sips of wine in France from the age of, like, 12, and they're absolutely fine about it.
Yeah.
Whereas we all know what happens to British girls, because I was one of them. You turn, however, old enough to get a bottle of Smirnoff Ice, and boy, do you go for it, and until you're vomiting, basically.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good morning. The naysayers pile on Labour as the party suffers a series of PR nightmares.
The Reform UK leader Nigel Farage accuses Health Secretary Wes Streeting of masking the truth about the rape gangs after he claimed that current rhetoric around the whole matter could increase the risk of attacks against British Muslims.
All this in a week that saw borrowing costs soar to their highest in 27 years. The Chancellor says in response she's going to claw back control by waging a war on public spending.
And pressure mounts on Sir Keir Starmer to sack Treasury Minister Tulip Siddiq after calls for a corruption investigation into her London properties.
The Los Angeles fires rage on. Death toll now 16. Some people are having a go at celebrity residents who apparently have been breaking water-saving rules to tend their lavish gardens.
Sub-zero temperatures continue as rare amber alerts for the cold are extended until Tuesday.
It's a foggy start to Sunday out there for some of us. Join me later for the full weather details to see how things will develop today.
It's just gone 9 o'clock. I'm Stephen Dixon.
And I'm Anne Diamond, and this is GB News Breakfast.
Lots of you getting in touch about dogs.
Oh, yeah.
Because this dog in the paper that apparently knows 200 words that, you know, you can tell it to go and fetch the paper, and it knows all these words. Christina says dogs are excellent actors. They can manipulate their owners with a look or a stare, so you feed them or give them attention.
Oh, dead right.
And pretend to be hurt when they're not. My dog pretended to be weeing when he just wanted to pause by a garden gate to look for a cat and lifted his leg up for no other reason. I can say my dog sort of cocks his leg and then doesn't do anything.
People say that we're anthropomorphising them if we consider that. But I don't think so. I think dogs really do understand an awful lot and do manipulate. And when my little dog was ashamed of what I was going to find when I went down the stairs, in other words, she'd been rootling through the rubbish. She used to do that. She would look ashamed at the top stair as I was just about to go down the stairs in the morning, and I'd say, "What have you done?" And she'd cower then, and she wouldn't come downstairs with me because she was ashamed. Now, a lot of people say that's not true, but it absolutely is. They know. They know.
They do know.
Yeah.
But that's partly why we love it.
And the other thing that's got you going this morning is beards on men.
Oh.
Yeah, do we or do we not like them?
Adrian says, I'm a man, don't like to see beards on men.
And other people, all sorts of opinions about whether people should have beards and whether we want people in our armed forces to have beards.
Well, I sort of think, why not?
Yeah, as long as they're sort of neat and tidy.
Yes.
Adrian says, I'm a Doctor Who fan, like you two.
Yes.
And since Disney took over, it's got so silly. I think I agree with you.
Do you? I haven't seen the Christmas special yet. So... Anyway, we shall see. Talking of men with beards, though, Charlie Rowley's here, going to talk politics.
Yeah.
But you're new to the beard fad, aren't you?
The beard brigade, yes. I am very new.
It suits you.
Well, thank you very much. It was.
What made you take the decision?
Well, it was by accident, I think, as most
Really?
sort of go away. Yes, I was away, and I forgot in my last-minute packing, forgot to take a razor, and I did buy a disposable one out there. But the friend who I was with actually said, "Oh, it looks quite good if you
see
grow
if you
it."
can.
So see if you can. And I've never done it before, and so I've obviously gone to the barbers a couple of times to get it sort of trimmed and
neat and
you know. I've had some nice reviews, so it's a 3-month trial. We'll see how it goes.
Is it?
But I'm still not comfortable with it myself sometimes. I just, often think, oh, that's not me. If you find yourself, when you catch yourself in the mirror in the morning, you're going to the bathroom, you think,
I guess you just get used to it,
You can shave it off if you want and grow it back in. Look, make the most of it because it's got colour. I've always wanted a beard, but mine, unfortunately...
Yours would be grey, would it?
It would be grey. Yeah. So it's I can't do it now. That would really age me.
Some men do it to age them, don't they? Because
yes, they do.
An older look, maybe in some sort of jobs, or they just want to acquire some immediate gravitas. They grow a beard, and a grey beard would give you old man look.
I don't. My brother's got a grey beard and it does age.
Oh, really?
But there you go. Sorry, Richard.
Oh, well.
Now, let's crack on with the politics, shall we? Because it's been a week of PR hell for Labour. Nigel Farage lighting the flame again, talking about this national inquiry that should be held into child rape gangs. And he's accused the Health Secretary of attempting to conceal the rape gangs after he claimed that public rhetoric could risk vilifying certain communities.
And then there's the Labour MP Dan Carden, who's broken ranks from Keir Starmer, joining Andy Burnham in his calls for a national inquiry.
Meanwhile, the Chancellor is now saying she's going to launch a war on wasted public finances because the economy's in a state after the budget. She's ignoring those calls, though, to resign.
And as if that wasn't enough, then you've got Labour facing turmoil elsewhere because of the anti-corruption minister. That's her job, Tulip Siddiq. She is, in fact, the niece of the ousted dictator of Bangladesh, and she has now been sort of forced to refer herself to the ethics watchdog over claims that she lived in London properties linked to her aunt.
Charlie's here, as you know. I mean, where to start, Charlie? I mean, it's just... it's piling on.
It is, and a series of negative headlines day after day for this Labour government on the back of a shaky start where they've sort of taken some tough decisions and obviously blamed those decisions on the mistakes of the past, the previous government, so taking away the winter fuel allowance, obviously the Prime Minister receiving a number of goods and gifts from Lord Ali, which obviously had to be paid back. You're now seeing, as you just said, whatever the details of this MP, Tulip Siddiq, but, the idea that her role is as an anti-corruption minister, having to refer yourself to the Ethics and Standards Committee because of properties that you may or may not have been gifted, and were they declared or not.
And where did the money go? I mean, because her aunt, who's now been replaced as the Prime Minister of Bangladesh, is accused of pilfering £3.9 billion from public finances.
Exactly. And so without, you don't need to know the detail to know that obviously that is something that needs to be looked into. And it is just another headache for the Prime Minister on the back of bad economic news following the budget and following, national issues like, those the rape gangs that we've all been talking about and hearing so much
Yes,
horrific.
now what do you make, then, of the fact that Wes Streeting said, I'm worried about the rhetoric around this issue. It could be endangering the Pakistanis, for instance, in my constituency. Wasn't he... I mean, some people have said that's effectively shutting down a conversation that we already know we should be having openly and honestly, and naming and possibly shaming certain people in the community.
Well, I do think there's an element of that, actually. I think you've got to be able to, wherever you spot something that obviously doesn't look right, or if you're aware of something, whether you're in a local council, local government, or whether you're a police officer or social services, or just a member of the community, and you've seen something that clearly is not right in your community, you should be able to call it out and articulate the issues effectively, obviously without... making it a debate about race or religion. Of course, when you have a particular community, and there has been clearly instance after instance, report after report of, gangs of Pakistani men in particular communities, whether it's Telford, whether it's Manchester, whether it's Rochdale, whether it's Rotherham, there is clearly a pattern here, which is why there's been this call for a national inquiry. Of course, you can be specific about those who are the perpetrators in a particular community, very specifically, without making it a case that of course you're not saying that all Pakistani men are going to be a problem, but when there is a pattern in these communities, you've got to be able to talk about it.
But it's finding the line, isn't it? And I know a lot of you won't like me saying it, but you've got to... You're quite right, it's got to be called out. You've got to address the fact it does seem to be certain Pakistani groups doing this from actually a certain region in Pakistan, where this seems to be prevalent. But what you don't want to do is encourage a mob mentality. Now, the New Zealand massacre in a mosque in which 50 people were murdered, the gunman had "For Rotherham" written on one of the gun cartridges. Now that's on the other side of the planet. And what Wes Street, surely it's not unreasonable for Wes Streeting to say, we've just got to make sure that something like that we don't inflame tensions so much that something like that happens over here.
There is, he's right to say that. Of course, you don't want to see inflamed tensions, but people will look at, I think, Wes Streeting, if you're going to be political about it, he has a large, Muslim population in his constituency. I think people will obviously, within the Labour Party, arguably, have not been able to tackle this issue head-on because there is large support for the Labour Party amongst Muslim communities.
But isn't there one way to shut down this problem, and is to have a national inquiry?
Well, yes. And I think that's why you're seeing people like Andy Burnham, Mayor of Greater Manchester, Labour Mayor, and now Dan Carden, obviously articulating exactly the same, because the only way that you're going to win support and, I think, respect from everybody, including, the Muslim and Pakistani community, is by saying, OK, yes, we are going to have a national inquiry, and it's going to be specific, it's going to be targeted in the areas where it needs to be, on the back of the information and the intelligence that we've had, as I say, across whether it's Telford, whether it's Rochdale, Rotherham, Manchester, Oldham, and, up to 50-plus cities that we're hearing about. It's got to be targeted, it's got to be specific, and that's why we're going to get to the root of the cause. And when you get to the root of the cause and the problem, you also are able to say, this is the actual issue, and these are the people, and these are the perpetrators, and that is not, exactly, and making that very clear to the public. So you don't find yourself in a situation where we saw in Southport, for example, where there were riots for the wrong reasons on the back of something that wasn't the case, but obviously a terrible tragedy there. So making it very clear to the public why we're doing what we're doing, why we're having a national inquiry, these are the people that we're going after, but let's be very clear, this isn't about race or religion more broadly. It is about a specific targeted group of individuals that are operating across this country that need to be brought to justice.
I mean, that's absolute common sense. You're a former advisor to Michael Gove. Why are there not advisors in Downing Street and in all these other departments saying exactly that to the people in charge? They should be.
Well, and again, that might be, and you can only speculate because of the relationship and the support that there might be, for example, Wes Streeting within his community, with his constituency. Obviously there's a lot of Labour MPs that do have support from Muslim communities. So not trying to rock that boat might be one thing. But I think, if you're someone that prides themselves, as the Prime Minister does, on putting, country before party and declaring that he's changed the Labour Party, as the former Director of Public Prosecutions, you've got to be absolutely able to go to the country and say, I don't really care who I offend or what the issues are. I'm doing it for absolutely the right reasons. And at the heart of everything that should be done in government, it seems to me, and particularly in this instance, are the victims. Who are the victims here? It isn't actually, ordinary people that are walking, whether you're Christian, white, or whether you're Muslim or any other religion. The victims are these young girls that have gone through hell at the hands of these criminal gangs, these rapists, these paedophiles that need to be brought to justice. You can't just turn the other cheek. You can't just sort of walk across the, you've got to tackle it head on. You've got to be direct. It's uncomfortable. It's not very nice, obviously, but people have been failed by the state, whether it's local authorities, the policing, social services, and that's why I think a national inquiry is something that many people are calling for. That's what the majority of people want, and that's why I think inevitably you're going to have to see movement in this area, and I think the Labour government will have to think twice and come back to the drawing board and say, we're going to have an inquiry.
They're going to have to. They're absolutely going to have to take the steam out of this, otherwise there's going to be, frankly, hell breaking loose if they don't do it. Anyway.
Charlie, thanks very much indeed.
Thank you.
Right, Camilla's programme is here at 9:30. Let's find out what she's got for us. Hi, Camilla.
Well, we've got a very cracker of a show this morning, a very packed show because, of course, we're reflecting on such a busy week in Westminster. The grooming gang scandal, as you've just been discussing with Charlie there, continues to rage. And we've now got a survey suggesting that 3 in 4 Brits think that there should be a public inquiry into the child rape scandal. I've got 2 survivors who I've spoken to this week for The Telegraph saying that they think that there should be an inquiry. So that hint that Jess Phillips seemed to be indicating that the government could U-turn on this, I think, get stronger by the hour. I'm going to be speaking to the Science and Technology Minister, Peter Kyle, about all this, and also, of course, asking him about Rachel Reeves being in China as the economy has been tanking. The Conservatives had a little bit of fun with it in the week and sort of dressed her up as Where's Wally? Where's Rachel? As this economic calamity continues with borrowing costs at a 27-year high. So I'll be speaking to Peter Kyle about that, and also the Shadow Chancellor of the Exchequer, Mel Stride. How much responsibilities must the Tories bear for this? Is it their legacy that's coming back to bite Labour, or are Labour just making it worse? Lots of questions around Rachel Reeves' competence, and quite a lot in the Sunday papers this morning suggesting that the Chancellor's position is precarious. I'll be speaking to a man who knows a little bit about resigning as Chancellor, Kwasi Kwarteng. He'll be in the studio to discuss whether Rachel Reeves is on a precipice. What will it take for her to resign? Will it be a lack of growth? If we go into recession, is she going to be in dicey territory? Indeed, if interest rates go up, is she in trouble? Also going to be speaking about the grooming gang child rape scandal with Lord Warney. He's the government advisor on extremism, just to talk about the factor of the perpetrators being predominantly Pakistani Muslim men and what that does mean for community relations. He was a Labour MP. He can perhaps also comment on whether Labour was asleep at the wheel in some of these northern constituencies where their MPs in some cases did turn down the idea of a national inquiry. And I'll be speaking to Jennifer Ewing, who's a member of the Republicans Overseas Group, to reflect on the wildfires in California and whether actually Democrat negligence is to blame, and also talking about Donald Trump's inauguration, which is happening in just days to come. So I'll be up in about 10 minutes' time. Stay tuned.
Lovely, Camilla, thank you. Busy show.
Yeah, it's not long till the inauguration now, is it?
No, that's going to be interesting.
Oh,
I'm looking forward to seeing what happens now. I think it's going to be very different from the last time round.
Yeah? Yes, I think so, but it'll be interesting, whatever. It certainly won't be dull.
No. I tell you what, your life may not be dull if you have 50 grand in your pocket that you can spend and do what you wish with.
Yes, that's what we're giving away in the Great British Giveaway. If you want to take part, here's how.
You can
Still to come, it's the coldest January since the noughties. Find out more next.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect, and then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
With the dawn of the new year come new opportunities for the stage. Stefan Kyriazis joins us now to share how he started 2025.
We've got Sigourney Weaver, Hollywood star, coming in as Prospero in The Tempest. It's an experience Sigourney Weaver has got this kind of patrician presence. She's always on stage, sat watching or stalking the area, but she doesn't quite get the Shakespearean rhythms for me. We've got more trauma for you, and we've got a little clip to run first. Cat on a hot tin roof. I don't know how people's Christmases were with their families, but this is a very unhappy family, so you can feel good about your family, whatever they're like. This is Tennessee Williams' deeply unhappy story of a family in sort of plantation south. The patriarch, Big Daddy, is dying, although he doesn't know it yet. Everyone is manoeuvring around him. Everyone is pretty unpleasant, pretty unhappy. It's all based on nobody really telling the truth. Everyone's suppressing things.
Got one more thing for us?
We do, and suddenly sunshine, life, joy. It's Nutcracker, but in Havana. Which is from Carlos Acosta. It's a very Cuban feel. And again, we've got a lovely little clip to cheer us all up. Good. With that. There was no Christmas when he was growing up. Castro had banned it all. So we've got this setting in Cuba, and instead of magicians, you've got the uncle coming back from Miami, loads of presents. It's just full of joy, and you've got a reworked music. I love the Tchaikovsky score to death. But this one has been added, so you've got kind of Caribbean flutes and lutes and guitars. Huge exuberance, colourful, bright.
GB News, the People's Channel.
It's right chilly at the moment.
Right chilly is a real understatement.
It is. In fact, it's the chilliest January we've had in more than a decade.
Yeah, which isn't helping the rise in flu cases either, because more than a dozen hospitals, apparently, have declared what they call critical incidents.
Yeah, amongst those falling foul of the virus, Carrie Johnson, Boris Johnson's wife, she's opened up about having to spend a week in hospital with flu and pneumonia. She took to Instagram, urging people to get a flu jab.
Yeah. Well, joining us now outside the Good Hope Hospital in Sutton Coldfield is GB News reporter Jack Carson. I hope you're keeping warm there, Jack.
Yes, well, it's certainly very chilly this morning, and these respiratory illnesses that have been linked to the current period of really cold weather are causing problems for NHS hospitals up and down the country. Multiple NHS Foundation trusts declaring critical incidents across the country this week. Now, critical incidents are those which are declared when essentially the health and care services are at a point where they are so busy they can't, they basically have to put themselves into special operations in order to keep patients safe. University Hospitals Trust in Birmingham has been one of the NHS foundations that has been put itself into critical incident declared earlier this week. On Friday, they were able, they say, to remove and stand down that critical incident, but they say not without taking extraordinary measures. Many hospitals across the country struggling with the serious levels of flu cases that we're currently seeing. On average, every day last week, 5,400 patients were in hospital with flu. That is the second highest level since the pandemic. And one of the reasons that there is so much pressure on NHS services linked to flu is because of the amount of also members of staff that are coming down with illnesses and having to take time off due to sickness or self-isolation. Last week, that was some 53,000 members of the NHS services up and down the country that are having to take time off. That is increasing the pressure. Matthew Taylor, Chief Executive of the NHS Confederation, saying that the intense pressure on the NHS is continuing to grow, and they expect that flu levels will peak in the next week or two. They're concerned about the increased pressure that would then continue to put on NHS services up and down the country. But you are mentioning just how cold it is. This week, I should say, in Scotland, temperatures dipped as low as -16 degrees. That's the coldest it's been in some 10, 15 years in this country. So it is a serious spate of cold weather at the moment. The UK Health and Security Agency have issued an amber alert. That came into effect at midday on the 9th of January. It's in place until the 14th of January, that's Tuesday at 9 a.m, urging people within the communities to check on those people, particularly over 65, to make sure they're okay in this recent spate of cold weather.
OK, Jack, thanks very much indeed. I know some people are wary of vaccines. And some people do react. I mean, actually, the flu one, you can react to it a little bit.
I've had it, though, and I didn't.
No, well, I have it every year.
Yeah.
I just think it's worth doing. One lady got in touch, said she had a really bad reaction to it a couple of years ago, so she won't have it again. Well, if you've had that, you can understand that. But for most people, it's OK.
Yeah. And the flu is very nasty indeed.
We forget, don't we, because people get a cold and say, I've got flu.
Yeah, it's not the same at all. But anyway, I do hope you keep warm and safe from any nasty viruses today, because it's really cold out there.
Yeah. Look after yourselves, but that is it from us. Up next, Camilla Tomlin is here with all the politics. We'll leave you with the weather.
Even though we'll see a cloudy start, it'll be a bright outlook for the rest of the day. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, very good morning to you. This is your GB News weather updates provided by the Met Office. Misty and murky start to the day for some of us. There is fog out there with light winds courtesy of high pressure. That does mean the fog could linger for a good while throughout today, particularly eastern areas of England, also Northern Ireland. Some quite dense fog patches around, so it is worth taking care if you are about to head out and travel at all. There will be, though, some sunny spells around once those fog areas do manage to clear off, particularly across parts of England and Wales. Temperatures, though, still a little below par for where we'd normally expect them to be for the time of year, particularly in the far southeast of England, struggling in places to get above much of 2-3 degrees Celsius. But further towards the west, we're starting to see the ingress of some southwesterly winds, and that is feeding in much milder conditions, so 8-9 degrees Celsius possible here. Those southwesterly winds, though, will really quite strengthen for the northwest of Scotland, particularly around the Outer Hebrides and in the Highlands. We could start to see some gales developing during the afternoon and evening period. We'll also see outbreaks of rain moving its way in across Scotland, parts of Northern Ireland as well, turning damper and wetter to end the day here. We will manage to stay dry across parts of England and Wales, but again, the odd fog patch is possible. We will lose the frost compared to some recent nights, so it will be milder for all of us, but still low single figures for parts of England. And again, once that fog does manage to clear its way off, it will be parts of central eastern areas of England that see the best chance of some sunshine throughout tomorrow as well. Further towards the north and west, though, some heavier outbreaks of rain swinging their way in, a much wetter day here. And those southwesterly winds still very persistent, so it is going to be a noticeably mild day for the time of year. Double-digit figures for Northern Ireland and Scotland, which could lead to some snow melt of the snow that has fallen over the last week or so. So potentially some surface water issues as that falls over the next few days to watch out for. Otherwise, enjoy the rest of your day. Bye-bye.
We'll see a cold snap, which will quickly develop into a warm front. Boxed Boiler Repairs, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Underestimate what you did, because to do it in their backyard as well, I bet they weren't happy about it, were they, Brad?
No, definitely not. Well, it makes it all the more sweeter. So they're usually pretty dominant in a two-man event, but four-man's usually where we can challenge them. And yeah, we managed to do it yesterday and put down 2 solid runs. And yeah,
so yeah, funding was a big issue for us in the last quad, but because of our results recently, we've picked up a lot more funding from UK Sport. So we're well funded now, and but yeah, the Bob is in the back of the van behind us, so we're driving it down to St Maritz as we speak. So yeah, that's how it all works in the background in bobsleigh.
Brad, you're the pilot, correct? So you're up front.
Yeah.
Now, what happens? I always wonder, because I remember seeing John Noakes on. Do you remember John Noakes on Blue Peter when he fell out of the bob and he ended up showing the back of his backside on TV because he had a big scar on there? What? So you've got the brake man. You're at the front. So where are you then, Aaron? Are you what number are you?
So I'm number 3. Yeah.
Right. So what do you do there? Is it just a matter of it's the running power? is what it's all about to get off to a good start, and then you can sit and enjoy the ride?
Yeah, that's it. So for number 2 and myself, number 3, it's all about getting that bob off the line and then just zipping it up to as high a speed as we can, basically. Yeah. Getting in, staying low, having good aerodynamics and staying still and let Brad do the work.
Yeah, it's definitely not a comfortable position for them because we're bending them and twisting them into quite an uncomfortable position to get as aerodynamic as possible. And when you've got 6 times G's pushing you through that is not... Yeah, not
definitely
fun.
stiff back this morning, that's for sure.
Because I'm just thinking where me and Eamon would sit. Is it 2 and 3, or would he go at number 4? What do you fancy?
I would be too frightened to do that.
GB News, the People's Channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.